Marvel's master of multiversal magic. Hello again, dear adventurers of the multiverse. Thanks for joining us once more on this epic journey. Remember, this story is pure science fiction from our wild imagination, so don't go trying to summon dragons in your backyard. The rights of this amazing novel belong entirely to its original author. We are only the narrators. Do you want more adventures? Show some love to our YouTube channel with a subscription and a like, and if you want exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting for you with open arms. Chapter 501 Reunion with the Ancient One. December 19, 2024. Author, Guaqianchuan. Through the memories of the Time Management Bureau guard, he saw Deadpool and Wolverine both struck by metal rods and sent to the void. Unlike Steve Rogers, Deadpool and Wolverine are immortal, so they don't really care about dodging and prefer to trade blows for kills. Therefore, they were careless in their fight with the guards. Mainly, the two were also fighting each other at the time. Deadpool wanted to take Wolverine to his world as an anchor, but Wolverine was content in his own world and naturally refused, leading to a fight. During their fight, the Time Management Bureau guards arrived. In the ensuing three-way battle, some guards died, and Deadpool and Wolverine were both struck and sent to the void. The void is a very special place in the Marvel Universe. It's the end of time in the Marvel Universe, essentially the Time Mutation Bureau's dumping ground. All people and things they previously deemed necessary to eliminate are sent to the void. This is because a monster called Helios exists in the void, capable of devouring everything, even time itself. Finding Wolverine is simple, just poke yourself with that metal rod. The trouble is getting back. Looks like I need to go learn that circle drawing trick from the Ancient One. Using the sling ring and borrowing the power of dimensional demons to open a portal, one can leave the void. In the movies, Deadpool and Wolverine left the void this way with Cassandra's help. He didn't learn Marvel magic before because Marvel magic is essentially borrowing the magic of various dimensional demons through loans, then having to repay interest several times over. Also, because these spells belong to the dimensional demons, he can't use them in other worlds even with his own magic. Unless he can analyze the essence of these spells and completely master them. But now the situation is different. He can go to the Ancient One to learn the portal opening magic first, even if it's borrowing the power of dimensional demons. Anyway, with his current strength, a Skyfather level dimensional demon is no match for him. Even a single universe level dimensional demon who leaves their dimension and comes to Earth will at most have Skyfather level strength, still no match for him. A true multiverse level dimensional demon can be borrowed. At worst, he can simply return it. It's only used occasionally, not every day, so he can afford to pay it back. After storing the corpses of the Time Mutation Bureau guards in his special storage, George instantly teleported to Kamar-Taj. Sorcerer Supreme, long time no see. Seeing the Ancient One leisurely brewing tea, George greeted her with a smile. The Ancient One's face showed a hint of surprise upon seeing George. Sorcerer George, your strength has increased considerably since the last time I saw you. A tiny bit. George waved his hand modestly. The last time he saw the Ancient One was before fighting Kerr. Now Kerr had been swallowed by him using a spirit summoning technique. Moreover, he had created a new clone during this time, and his magical learning in various worlds hadn't stopped. Therefore, his strength had indeed seen a significant leap forward. If he was previously at the sub-celestial level, now he could be considered a true celestial level being, and one of the more powerful ones at that. After all, the techniques he had learned from so many worlds were incomparable to those of ordinary celestials. If the Black Dragon couldn't nullify magic by absorbing it, he wouldn't be a match for him at all. If he unleashed his full power, continuously unleashing various high-powered spells, he could even destroy a planet. Sorcerer George, is there something you need? The Ancient One didn't expose George's modesty, but naturally poured him a cup of tea. She knew that George wouldn't come without a reason. He must have something to say. A kindred spirit, the Sorcerer Supreme truly understands me. A teacher at my school was sent to the void by the Time Mutation Bureau, and I want to rescue him. So I wish to ask the Sorcerer Supreme about how to use a portal to travel through the universe. George stated his request without any concealment. There was no need to lie to the Ancient One, because lying would certainly be seen through. Behind the Ancient One stood Eternity, one of the 5 cosmic entities, and the embodiment of countless universes in the Marvel Universe. If she agreed, that would be good. If not, he wouldn't dare force her, and would have to think of other methods. The Time Mutation Bureau, you've actually made contact with them. The void is indeed causing some trouble. Gu paused, then smiled slightly. You want to learn portal magic, that's fine, but now because of you, many humans on Earth may migrate to other planets in the universe. I'm a little worried about the future. If something happens to my next Sorcerer Supreme, it will be a real problem for me. Since George's rise, she has become increasingly unable to see the future of this universe, even with a time stone. The future of this universe is constantly changing. What she sees today as highly likely to happen may no longer occur in a few days. This is abnormal. There are many possibilities for the future, but the most probable ones are difficult to change. For example, if you encounter a very powerful enemy, in a future battle, there are 100 million ways you might lose and only one way you might win. Without interference, the 100 million possibilities will have the highest probability of occurring. But now, because of George's appearance, what was originally 100 million possibilities has become 10,000 in a few days, and then 0 in a few more days. It's impossible to predict. Previously, when she was observing her future successor, she discovered that Doctor Strange, who was originally supposed to arrive in Kamar-Taj in 2016 due to the death of his lover, had instead been crippled after being hit by a car and arrived in Kamar-Taj. Recently, upon observing again, she saw Doctor Strange leave Earth to live on another planet in the universe. Don't worry, there won't be any problems. Having learned the portal technique, I'm also part of Kamar-Taj, and I'll protect Kamar-Taj in the future. George, being an exceptionally intelligent man, instantly understood the Ancient One's concerns. The problem was too simple. He would go back and instruct them to restrict Doctor Strange from leaving Earth, denying him immigration privileges. From then on, immigration and tourism to Earth would require not only money but also luck. Only half of those who applied would be selected, and Doctor Strange would always be one of the unsuccessful half. Until 2016, when he arranged for someone to cause a car accident, it would absolutely not affect the Ancient One's resignation and return to the embrace of eternity. Actually, I've long considered Master George as part of Kamar-Taj. Which kind of Kamar-Taj magic do you want to learn? I can personally teach you. The Ancient One reached out and touched the time stone hanging on her chest, glanced at Doctor Strange's new future, and nodded with satisfaction. Some things are better left unsaid. It was good that George understood her meaning. Chapter 502. This tree was planted by me. This road was paved by me. December 19, 2024. Author, Guaqianchuan. 2 hours later, George left Kamar-Taj with a sling ring personally crafted by the Ancient One. Portals aren't particularly advanced magic. They're the first spell any sorcerer who joins Kamar-Taj learns. Those with high talent can even use them immediately upon receiving them. George, with his numerous clones and his magical talent, coupled with his status as a magic master comparable to the Ancient One, mastered it quickly. The 2 hours he spent there were mainly spent with the Ancient One explaining some precautions regarding using portals for multiverse travel. The Ancient One frequently traveled through the multiverse and astral projection and was very experienced in this area. Portals are indeed a basic spell in Kamar-Taj, but the effects vary depending on the sorcerer's strength. Generally, the stronger the sorcerer, the farther the portal can extend. Top-tier sorcerers can open portals across planets or even galaxies. For someone like the Ancient One, opening a portal to other universes isn't particularly difficult. With his current strength, George can also travel between universes using the portal magic derived from the Vishanti Trinity. However, there's a prerequisite. He needs precise spatial coordinates for location. For example, if George has always lived in his current universe, he can easily sense the coordinates of the void and return by opening a portal. But if George hasn't been to other universes, he can't open a portal to that universe. However, this isn't absolute. If there are people from other universes, he can use them to locate the coordinates of their own universe, thus opening a portal to that universe. What a useful magic. I wonder when my strength will allow me to freely travel between universes. I'll probably need to reach at least a multiverse level. Back in his room on the floating island, George couldn't help but sigh. Although he's learned the portal magic and can travel between universes, it's not entirely due to his own strength. It mainly relies on the power of the Vishanti. Otherwise, with his understanding of spatial magic, he wouldn't be able to cross the spatial barriers between universes and enter other universes. Thinking about it again, the prospect of traversing the entire Marvel universe to enter other worlds and reunite with his counterparts in those worlds was even more difficult. It could only be said that the revolution was not yet complete, and comrades still had a long way to go. Looking at it this way, the void seems like a pretty good place. Holding the metal rod in his hand, George turned it on and gave himself a jolt. His original plan was to enter the void to rescue Wolverine, and then see if he could obtain the Time Mutation Bureau's tools for entering different universes. That way, he could visit other universes if needed. But now it seemed unnecessary. The void contained many characters from various universes, through whom he could naturally locate their coordinates. Then he could travel through portals one by one. Once he went there, he could remember the coordinates of that universe, and next time he was in this universe, he could simply open a portal whenever he wanted to go. Struck by the shearing rod, George's body instantly disappeared from this universe, reappearing in a world of ruins. Staying here isn't all bad, at least you can live forever. Sensing the laws of this place, George discovered that, being at the end of time, there was no erosion of time. As long as he wasn't eaten by Helios, theoretically, he wouldn't die of old age here. It was a kind of alternative immortality. Let's find Wolverine first. George waved his hand, casting a homing spell, and flew towards the golden directional marker. Unlike the Time Mutation Bureau in the Time Rift, the Void didn't prohibit the use of magic. Here, magic could be used normally, unaffected. In fact, George could use magic even in the Time Mutation Bureau. The reason magic couldn't be used in the Time Mutation Bureau wasn't because all energy was eliminated, otherwise, electricity from technology wouldn't work either. Mutants like Deadpool would become weak and cancer patients the moment they entered the Time Mutation Bureau due to the loss of their healing factor. The reason magic couldn't be used in the Time Mutation Bureau was simply because it isolated the connection with the dimensional cosmic beings. Loki's magical power came from the World Tree, and Doctor Strange's magical power came from the Vishanti and the dimensional cosmic beings. Therefore, mages like them would instantly become ordinary people upon entering the Time Management Bureau. Similarly, the power of the 6 Infinity Stones originates from their respective universes. Once they leave that universe, they lose their source of power and become mere beautiful stones. George, however, is different. George's power comes from himself. Most of the magic he needs to unleash his spells is provided by his own body. And even without magic, he could easily break through the Time Management Bureau with sheer physical strength. Of course, he certainly wouldn't do that. He wasn't afraid of the Time Management Bureau, but he couldn't afford to mess with Loki, the god of stories behind it. Found them, speeding along, passing several shattered space carriers, giant ships, and various miscellaneous historical sites. He finally spotted Wolverine and Deadpool near a cluster of pyramids. The two were bound face to face in a cage, next to Captain America. No, a Human Torch who looked exactly like Captain America. "This tree is mine, this road is mine, if you want to pass, leave your toll." With a flash, he appeared in front of the convoy, his shout bringing the entire convoy to a halt. Wolverine, who was arguing with Deadpool in the cage, breathed a sigh of relief when he saw George appear. "The headmaster's here. We're saved, headmaster?" "What headmaster? Isn't the headmaster the bald professor? This looks like him when he was young. Is he an Avenger? Doesn't seem like it. Are you sure he can save us? He doesn't look very strong." Deadpool twisted his head back 180 degrees, even risking breaking his neck. But after seeing George's appearance, he couldn't help but start complaining again. "Wade, I really want to cut your head off again so you can shut your damn mouth. If it weren't for you, I'd be teaching my students right now." Wolverine slammed his forehead into the back of Deadpool's head, silencing him temporarily. The Human Torch, who was tied up and sitting on the other side of the cage, shook his head. "Don't have any illusions. Whoever comes here will either become Helios's food or Cassandra's beast of burden." Chapter 503 Showing off one skill buff for an expert. 2024-12-19 Author, Kakadua Trees? There are no trees here. It's a newcomer. Good, another prey. The mutant fireman, leading the convoy, turned his head to look at the sand and towering pyramids nearby, then at George blocking his way, a disdainful smile on his face. Many people who enter the void think they are the protagonist, but as it turns out, they are not. There's only one protagonist here. That is the overlord of the void, Cassandra. Trees? I said there are trees, and there will be trees. George stomped his foot lightly, and from him, the desert wind instantly turned into grassland, and rows of large trees sprouted on both sides of the convoy. "Leave my schoolteachers and his friends, and I'll consider letting you leave." "Interesting. Do you think you're the only one in the world with that ability?" Fireman ordered the man crouching on the hood of the car beside him. "Toad, take care of him." Toad opened his mouth, and his long tongue shot out like lightning, aiming to bind George's body. However, his tongue flicking speed was clearly not as fast as the magic speed. The moment his tongue flicked out, a beam of blue light shot out at him. And it wasn't just the toad, the blue light bounced off the toad and hit most of the people in the convoy. Everyone hit by the blue light was stiff and unable to move. It was the lightning chain version of George's full body binding curse. These people came from different timelines in various Marvel universes, each of them could be used as special coordinates, so they couldn't be killed indiscriminately. Looks like we've got someone pretty strong. Cassandra's going to reward me now. Fireman's eyes lit up at the sight. He took out a lighter from his pocket, lit it, and controlled the flames to transform into a fire dragon that lunged at George. Showing off your skills, George opened his mouth, and the fire dragon was instantly sucked into his mouth. Here you go. A magic circle lit up, and a new fire dragon composed of 3 colored flames took shape, shooting towards Fireman. Fireman's face showed a cold smile at the sight. HMPH, no fire can harm me. He was somewhat surprised that the opponent could eat fire, but to try and attack him with fire was as foolish as the Thunderbolt. He had just used his fire control ability to neutralize all of the Thunderbolt's flames. Now, he could control the tricolored fire dragon to turn and attack the opponent, making it suffer the consequences. What's going on? Why isn't it working? But the next second, his expression changed. He discovered that no matter how he activated his ability, the tricolored fire dragon was beyond his control, as if his ability had failed. A scream rang out as the tricolored fire dragon engulfed the fireman, but the flames didn't kill him, they only burned away all his magic and clothes. Seeing the fireman defeated, the others raised their weapons to attack George. But with a mere thought, George forcibly stretched their weapons into iron bars, binding them. The fireman did indeed have the ability to control fire, but he also had control over the magic he used. As long as his control over magic was superior to the fireman's control would be ineffective. Just like if 2 people with the ability to control fire were to fight, the one with the higher control would definitely gain ultimate control. The only one in the Marvel universe who could rival George for control of fire would be Surtur, the fire giant, and even then, only at his peak. As for the fireman in front of him, trash. You guys are really passionate in that pose. Having read Fireman's memories and sent those who could help him locate various universes into his own special imprisonment, George arrived in front of the iron cage holding Deadpool, Wolverine, and the Human Torch. Logan rolled his eyes helplessly. Headmaster, stop joking around. Help us untie these damn chains. He and Deadpool were currently bound face to face, very tightly, and even the slightest movement felt like a nauseating fencing match. Oh, little Wolverine, are you disgusted with me? You know, we used to be good brothers, good comrades in arms, fighting side by side. Every time I think of you, I feel completely safe. Deadpool forcefully shook his head, then snapped his neck back. Once his neck had healed, he turned to George. You can manipulate metal. Are you a younger version of Magneto, or perhaps his son? Neither. George smiled and shook his head, waving his hand to untie the chains binding the 3. Human Torch stood up and thanked George. Although I don't know you, thank you for saving me. However, we'd better leave here first, otherwise Cassandra will discover the anomaly and soon bring her people over herself, which will be troublesome. Cassandra, you were just talking about this girl. Who exactly is she that makes you so afraid? Deadpool leaned close to Human Torch. Human Torch stiffened his neck. Afraid? I'm afraid of that slut? She's a hopeless idiot, a perverted freak who's been given glycerin, with a dark heart and short legs. Let me tell you what she's only fit to do. What? Deadpool immediately became interested. Human Torch cursed viciously. She only deserves to lick my noble, aloof pussy, and then die as far away as possible with that bald head of hers. Actually, I don't care if she skins me alive or crushes me into dust like a nightmare. If I could do one last thing before I die, it would be to burn her to ashes and then piss on those ashes. Or shove Juggernaut's dick into her pussy to rinse her mouth. Ha ha ha. Baby, you're crazy. If I see her, I'll definitely tell her everything you said verbatim. Deadpool laughed, clutching his stomach. Wolverine shook his head. Steve never swears. It's a bit strange to see this guy with the same head as Steve. There's probably no need to tell her. There are cameras on this cage, and they seem to be connected in real time. I guess Ms. Cassandra has seen and heard everything. George half-jokingly raised his hand and waved at the camera above the cage, and the camera actually switched from Human Torch's side to George's side. Upon hearing this, Human Torch's legs went weak, and he nearly collapsed to the ground. Clearly, he wasn't as tough as he'd portrayed himself. "We can't stay here. I'll take you to the Rebel Alliance base, it's safer there. Don't worry, everyone there's like me, unwilling to submit to Cassandra. Let's go take a look." George, seeing Wolverine looking at him, nodded and smiled, following after him. His purpose here, besides rescuing Wolverine, was to collect more cosmic coordinates, in other words, to gather information about characters from different universes and timelines. Going to the Rebel Alliance base was perfect. Chapter 504 The Resisting Quartet. 2024-12-20 Author, Kakagal. Alright, seeing George follow, Wolverine followed without much thought. In his eyes, no one was more reliable than Principal George, and judging from George's expression, he already knew that if George could come, he must have a way to leave. "Little Wolverine, wait for me, let me reconsider my suggestion. You're perfect for being an anchor in our world. You're saving the world, you're a superhero." Deadpool stopped posing for the camera and hopped over to Wolverine's back, only to be met with a giant over-the-shoulder throw. "Wade, if you call me that again, I'll shove your head into your ass and let you see if your rectum is straight enough. I'm happy in my own world and don't want to go to yours. If you want to save your world, go look in other worlds. I just want to save those 9 people, because they are my whole world." Deadpool, thrown forward, lay on the ground, looking at the dim sky, muttering to himself. Just then, George, who happened to be passing by, said something. "Bringing Logan to your world won't make him the anchor for Wolverine in your world. Things aren't as simple as you think. But if you want to save your family and friends, I can help. You can read my mind? Are you Magneto and Professor X's child? That's explosive. In your universe, is Magneto a woman, or is Professor X a woman?" Deadpool flipped to his feet, leaning close to George, his face full of gossip. George, too lazy to answer, simply raised his hand. Silence. Deadpool was definitely the most famous chatterbox in the Marvel Universe. If his voice wasn't silenced, there would be more trouble later. "Ha ha ha, Headmaster, well done. Now it's finally quiet." Seeing Deadpool suddenly speechless, gesturing wildly, King Kong immediately burst into gloating laughter. Sure enough, the smile never disappeared, it only shifted. "Walking like this is too slow. My abilities have recovered somewhat, so I'm going to fly over. Can you guys keep up?" Human Torch, walking at the front, noticed that some of his previously depleted energy had returned, allowing him to unleash flames again. He turned to George and the others and asked. At their current speed, they were likely to be caught. He wasn't afraid of Cassandra's henchmen, but if Cassandra herself came, he was doomed. "It's alright, just fly. We can keep up." George raised his hand, and iron sand erupted from the ground, transforming into a black cloud that lifted Logan, Deadpool, and himself into the air. "Wow, you have so many abilities." Human Torch couldn't help but give George a thumbs up. In all his years in the void, George was the strongest guy he'd ever seen besides Cassandra. Human Torch, with a roar, Human Torch was enveloped in flames and flew away. George's mind moved, and the iron sand cloud followed closely behind. Half an hour later, they appeared above a primeval forest. "We're here, right there." Human Torch pointed to a stone house faintly visible in the forest and explained to the 3, "There are 4 of us left now. I was going out to look around and see if I could find some useful supplies, but I ran into Cassandra's hunting party. I thought there were many of you, but there are only 4. Deadpool couldn't speak, so he could only gesture. Human Torch rarely showed a hint of sadness. The others all died at Cassandra's hands. "If it weren't for you guys today, I probably wouldn't be back alive," but he quickly regained his energetic demeanor. "That bastard, IXXXX, alright, let's go down and meet your friends first." George waved to interrupt Human Torch's swearing, and led Wolverine and Deadpool down. They had barely landed and taken 2 steps when 3 people rushed out of the house. A beautiful woman in a leather jacket holding a fork, a tough guy with a buzz cut and wearing a magic mirror, and a playboy holding playing cards ready to fire at any moment. Eric, Raimi, they're not enemies, they're friends." Human Torch quickly stepped forward to stop the 3's attack. The 3 relaxed upon seeing Human Torch, then their faces lit up with joy. "Kid, you've been gone for 2 days. I thought something had happened to you." "Something did happen, but thankfully they rescued me." Human Torch then briefly recounted his ordeal to the 3. Meanwhile, George's gaze swept over them, a look of doubt on his face. In his memory, the resistance organization in this void should have 5 members, not 4, plus a slightly older female wolf girl. Could that female wolf girl be from my universe? A thought flashed through his mind, and he had some guesses. Actually, in the universe he had traveled to, if it weren't for his unexpected appearance, Wolverine's fate would have been the same as Wolverine's in Deadpool's universe. If he hadn't appeared, in his current universe, Wolverine would have died, and the female wolf girl and the remaining children would have gone to Canada, probably without a good ending. Perhaps only the female wolf girl would have survived to adulthood, and then, due to some accident, be cut into the void. His appearance changed the fate of Wolverine and his daughter in his universe, preventing the daughter from entering the void and allowing her to continue her studies there. The daughter's age in the movie is quite similar to her age in his universe. It's also because this universe's Wolverine is alive that Deadpool searched for another universe when looking for him. However, the anchor of their universe is most likely Doctor Strange, not Wolverine. After all, in this universe's normal development, everyone except Doctor Strange died in the end. Welcome to the team. From now on, we'll work together to fight Cassandra and find a way to leave this place and return to our own universes. After hearing the Human Torch's explanation, the 3 Blades put away their weapons and welcomed George, Wolverine, and Deadpool. George then cut to the chase. If you want to leave this place and return to your own universes, I have a way, you have a way. The 3 Blades, the Human Torch, and Deadpool all showed excited expressions. Since they couldn't use a Wolverine from another universe to replace their own as the anchor, Deadpool was eager to return and stop Paradox from using the time-crushing machine to destroy his own universe. Only Wolverine remained calm and composed, believing that since George had come, he must have a way to get back. The principal never fought a battle he wasn't sure of winning. Yes, if you want, I can send you back right now, George shrugged. These 4 people were 4 new cosmic coordinates. Chapter 505 The World of Blade. December 20th, 2024 Author, Kakagal Go back, go back, go back, go back, Blade, Human Torch, and the other 2 answered without hesitation. They all had family and friends in their respective universes, and they longed to return to their own universes and reunite with them. Why did so many people rush to fight Cassandra? The void was so vast, as long as one focused on hiding, Cassandra's small force would have no chance of finding them. The reason for fighting Cassandra was the rumor that she had a way to leave the void. However, so far, no one had ever returned alive. Cassandra was too powerful, so powerful that even all the people cut from the void combined couldn't defeat her. Now that there was a chance to safely return to their own universes, who would refuse? Wait a moment about your situation, no rush. I'll send them back first. Seeing Deadpool jump in front of the 4, pointing eagerly at him, George simply pushed him aside. Deadpool can't be sent back yet, because if he goes back, Paradox will definitely send a large number of Time Guardians to hunt him down. He'll send Deadpool back after dealing with the void and obtaining the coordinates of many parallel universes, and use Deadpool as a medium to establish contact with the Time Mutation Bureau. Anyway, it'll take Paradox several days to get its time-crushing machine ready. At his speed, he can handle things here in a few hours. Is your friend mute? Gambit asked the Human Torch in a low voice, seeing Deadpool jumping around anxiously like a flea. The Human Torch shook his head gleefully. He's too annoying. Mr. George temporarily restricted his speech with his abilities. There's someone even more boisterous than you, Erica teased from the side. Although they came from different universes, the 4 had developed some bond after spending so much time together. The impending separation was undeniably bittersweet. No need to do anything, just stand there. George approached Blade, placed his left hand on his shoulder, and began to sense Blade's cosmic coordinates through Blade's senses, while his right hand lightly drew a circle beside him. As the portal formed, Blade's universe appeared before George and the others. Oh, my balls, you bastard, when my reinforcements arrive, I'll make you taste the power of my big dick, make your throat smoke. On the other side of the portal was a secret room, where a handsome man with 8-pack abs was being brutally stomped on in his groin by a beautiful woman in a leather jacket with her high heels. Although he was screaming and howling, his mouth was full of sweet talk. Hearing this, the woman stomped even harder. Tell me, where's Blade? Is this a restricted place for special interests? Human Torch excitedly poked his head in. Wolverine lit a cigar, looked at the handsome man being stomped on by the woman with her high heels, and then looked at Deadpool next to him. Wade, why does he look about the same as you did when you were young? Obviously, he's not as handsome as me, and he doesn't have my physique either. Deadpool couldn't speak, so he gestured with his hands. Blade passed through the portal, his long sword flashing as he swiftly hacked the beautiful woman and the several burly men beside her into dust. Before I was ambushed and sent to the void by those guys, I was attacking a vampire base, preparing to kill a vampire progenitor who had been resurrected from the desert. I never thought that after all these years, I'd be back at this time again. By the way, he was one of my teammates back then, Hannibal King. Also a vampire hunter. Damn Eric, if you had been any later, I would have been sucked dry by that female vampire. Hannibal King clutched his groin and struggled to his feet, unable to resist complaining as he saw Blade appear. According to the plan, Eric should have appeared 10 minutes ago. But he quickly realized something was wrong. What's with this circle? I thought you were going to come down from there. And who are they? My friends. It's a long story. Something unexpected happened, but thankfully they helped me, otherwise I wouldn't be back. Blade sheathed his sword, his expression full of emotion. In Hannibal King's eyes, it had only been a day since they last met, but for him, many years had passed. He thought he would never return, but unexpectedly, George helped him and brought him back. Mr. George, will R going to help effect our return later? Erica suddenly asked George. She had heard Eric's story. In fact, they had each told their own stories during their time in the void. So she knew how powerful the progenitor of vampires was, and Eric might not be able to win. If it didn't delay their return to their respective universes, she wanted to go and help Eric, after so many years of sharing hardships and life and death experiences. Hearing Erica's words, the Human Torch and Gambit also looked at George. They clearly shared the same thought as Erica. It won't affect anything, but it's best not to waste too much time, otherwise it will be troublesome if the Time Mutation Bureau discovers the anomaly and tracks us down. George thought for a moment, then nodded. The vampire progenitor's strength was only average, and Erica and the others going to help probably wouldn't take too long. Besides, he originally needed to stay there for a few minutes to fully record the spatial coordinates of Blade's universe. Since we're just killing time, I'll help out. After George led Erica, Gambit, and Human Torch through the portal, Wolverine thought for a moment, slowly extended his adamantium claws, and followed. Leaving him alone with Wade, even if Wade couldn't speak, would still make him uncomfortable. Wade was not only talkative but also hyperactive. Seeing Wolverine enter the portal, Deadpool drew his twin blades and jumped in without hesitation. He didn't want to be left behind alone. Thank you. Blade was a tough guy and wouldn't say anything too hypocritical. He thanked them and rushed out of the room, charging towards the vampire guards outside. Erica, Gambit, Human Torch, Wolverine, and Deadpool followed closely behind, slaughtering the large number of vampires in the base. Each of them possessed strength comparable to Blade, or even greater. The ordinary vampires were no match for them. Where did Eric find so many powerful friends? Hannibal King, watching the one-sided battle outside, couldn't help but swallow hard. Then, glancing at the chains on his wrist, he hurriedly shouted, "Hey, Eric, cut these chains off for me before you go." "Alright, go ahead." George waved his hand, and the chains on Hannibal King's wrist immediately fell off automatically. With another wave, the wounds on his body rapidly healed. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 506, The Frustrated Progenitor of Vampires. December 22nd, 2024. Author, Kakaga. It's amazing. It's all healed. Eric, you have friends like you. Why didn't you say so sooner? Hannibal King looked at the gunshot wound in his chest, visibly healing, feeling the pain subside in his penis and testicles, his face filled with astonishment. If he didn't clearly know he was now human, he would have thought he had been turned into a vampire. Thanks, friend. After this, I'll treat you to a striptease at the best bar. Now that his injuries had healed, he couldn't be idle. He picked up 2 guns from the ground and charged out, yelling, "You vampire bitches, taste daddy's big guns." Also a chatterbox. George smiled and shook his head, slowly closing his eyes, beginning to sense this universe and record its spatial coordinates. The Blade Warrior universe was relatively simple, mainly consisting of various vampires, which wasn't of much value to him. But now his goal was to acquire as many cosmic coordinates as possible, so that he could come back anytime if needed. While George was sensing the cosmic coordinates, Blade and the others quickly dispersed throughout the base, slaughtering the vampires. You've arrived. Get ready. Who are you? In a room within the base, Drake, the progenitor of vampires, heard the door behind him kicked open and slowly turned around, sword in hand. He had expected Blade to be the one who had fought his way here, but instead saw a man wielding two long swords and wearing a strange red bodysuit. I'm Batman. You're a vampire. You can turn into a bat. I'm Batman. We're a perfect match. Deadpool pulled a black cloth from the side and draped it over himself, extending a friendly hand and striding towards Drake. He had discovered he could speak when he rushed out with the others, which was why they had split up under the pretext of increasing their kill efficiency. Unexpectedly, he was the first to encounter the progenitor of vampires. What, Batman? Drake frowned, not taking Deadpool's outstretched hand, but instead piercing Deadpool's heart with his sword. Just an idiot. Seeing Deadpool unable to even block one of his swords and fall to the ground in disbelief, Drake relaxed his brow, drew his longsword, and turned around again. He had initially thought the oddly dressed Deadpool might be a powerful vampire hunter hired by Blade, but it turned out to be just a lowly henchman with clearly negative intelligence. So, after dealing with him, he maintained his original posture, facing away from the door, waiting for Blade to come and fight. However, as soon as he turned around, two long swords pierced his chest from behind. Surprised? Surprised? I knew villains like to pose with their backs to the door. Confused now, Deadpool brought his mouth close to Drake's ear and mocked slyly. Drake was filled with disbelief, then reversed his grip on his longsword and stabbed at Deadpool, who pulled out the sword and jumped away. You're not human, what are you? A normal human would surely die from being stabbed through the heart, but the other man was completely unharmed. If the other party were a transformed vampire, or even a half-vampire, he, as the progenitor of vampires, would immediately recognize it. But the other party was clearly not. I'm your best partner. Deadpool brandished his twin blades, cheekily charging towards Drake. Drake, seeing he wouldn't get any information, stopped wasting words and met the attack head-on with his sword. One was a mutant who could cut bullets with twin blades and was immortal. The other was the progenitor of vampires, possessing equally superhuman healing abilities and speed far exceeding that of normal vampires. When the two clashed, blood splattered everywhere, creating an extremely bloody scene. Oh, shit, after a fierce battle, the progenitor of vampires had a slight edge, kicking Deadpool out of the house. After all, being the progenitor of an entire superhuman race, his strength and speed were still superior to Deadpool's. Need any help? At this moment, Wolverine, smoking a cigar, was attracted by the commotion and happened to walk over. Seeing Deadpool being kicked out, he squatted down in front of him and teased. Of course, I really need your protection. Deadpool was deeply moved. So the two joined forces and charged in again. Deadpool and Wolverine, the immortal duo and both masters of combat, were too much for the progenitor of vampires to handle. After being brutally beaten, he transformed into a monster in a fit of rage, his strength increasing several times over. The transformed Drake completely overwhelmed Deadpool and Wolverine. Fortunately, others arrived gradually after dealing with the surrounding vampires. First, Blade broke in through the window, followed by Erica and Gambit, and finally the flamboyant Human Torch. Also present were Blade's former teammates from this world, Hannibal King and Albert. The transformed Drake was indeed terrifyingly strong, but he couldn't withstand the combined onslaught of so many experts, who possessed both melee and ranged attacks, and their excellent teamwork. Deadpool and Wolverine were former teammates, and Blade and the other two were also teammates, having fought alongside the Human Torch multiple times in the void. Soon sensing death, he crashed through a wall and began to flee for his life. Damn it, wasn't there only one Blade? How come there are so many troublesome guys? What happened to the world while I was asleep all these years? Chase him. We can't let him escape, Blade roared, and the others quickly gave chase. But soon, their expressions changed. They realized that Drake was running in the direction they had come from, the direction of the interrogation room where George was. The roof of the base was directly above that interrogation room, and Drake was trying to escape to the roof and jump away. I predict this guy's in trouble, Deadpool said gleefully as he chased. He had seen George use his metal manipulation ability to instantly subdue a small team of mutants. The progenitor of vampires was indeed strong, but he was probably no match for George. If George could just hold him off, they could catch up and kill him. No need to chase him, he's dead. At this moment, Wolverine, who had seen Drake rush into the interrogation room, stopped in his tracks. No one here knew George's strength better than him. High probability? They weren't even in the same league. Sure enough, just as everyone was wondering, they saw Drake, the moment he rushed into the interrogation room, blasted back by a bolt of lightning thicker than a bucket. How is this possible? Drake landed, his face filled with disbelief and terror, before his entire body instantly turned into a pile of black ash. At that moment, George's voice came from inside the interrogation room. Time's almost up. Any further delay, and the Time Mutation Bureau will be here. Chapter 507. A large number of tools arrive. December 22, 2024. Author, Guaqianchuan. After obtaining the coordinates of Blade's universe, George led the group back to the void through a portal, and then continued to open new portals. These included the parallel universe where Erica resided, primarily the Daredevil universe, the mutant universe where Gambit resided, and the Fantastic Four universe where the Human Torch resided. Unlike Blade, the other three didn't need help in combat, so after being sent back, they only stayed for 5 minutes to collect the coordinates before returning. After returning to their respective universes, all four promised George that he could contact them anytime if he needed their help in the future. Next, he retrieved the group from before, including the group led by Pyro, and used them to sense their coordinates. Blade and the others were friends. George had simply returned them as a favor when obtaining their coordinates. As for Pyro and the others, they were enemies. Enemies captured by him were spoils of war, to be used however he pleased, and if they were no longer useful, to be eliminated as appropriate. Therefore, there was no need to expect to return them. They all locate the target, open a portal, and then throw them back into space after collecting the coordinates, basically using them as tools. However, not everyone's universe exists. Many have been destroyed for various reasons. These people cannot obtain the corresponding coordinates. While George was collecting coordinates one by one, a large batch of new tools were already on their way. Interesting. Aside from that mage last time, after all these years, finally someone decent has been sent over. It seems those guys from the Time Mutation Bureau aren't all useless. 2 hours earlier, in a base made from Ant-Man's gigantic body, Cassandra watched the surveillance video sent by her subordinates, her face showing great interest. She loved the Voidland because it was where she was queen. She could do whatever she wanted, and no one could defy her. Unfortunately, the guys sent by the Time Mutation Bureau over the years hadn't been very strong, making it difficult for her to get too interested. However, the Time Mutation Bureau's guards were only capable of dealing with ordinary people anyway. Over the years, only her battles with Magneto and Doctor Strange had given her a decent feeling, but even those didn't last long under her full power. If she hadn't been so young and her abilities weren't fully developed back then, the Time Mutation Bureau wouldn't have been able to cut her up. Now, she's even managed to get the Time Mutation Bureau to sign an agreement with her based on her own strength. She won't seek revenge on the Time Mutation Bureau for cutting her up, and the Time Mutation Bureau can't interfere in the Void. The Void is her private territory. The Time Mutation Bureau can only send people in, and their fate is up to her. If the Time Mutation Bureau dares to interfere in the Void, she'll use the sling ring she stole from Doctor Strange to storm the Time Mutation Bureau and have a good talk with him. Actually, she quite likes her current life and the Void. She no longer has to listen to her brother Charles nagging her every day, telling her to restrain her abilities and not to do this or that. In the Void, she has no scruples. She can use her abilities however she wants and kill whomever she wants. The Time Mutation Bureau also had guys working for her, constantly sending her all sorts of interesting toys. This place was her playground. And today, the Time Mutation Bureau finally sent another interesting guy. Judging from the metal controlling ability shown on the monitor, it seemed to be almost on par with Magneto. Master, let me take men to kill him and avenge Pyro. Below the throne, the burly Juggernaut volunteered. Cassandra laughed maniacally. No, 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 this time I'll go myself. It's rare to find such good prey, and he's not bad looking either. I'll make him my new pet. Standing up from the throne, Cassandra waved her hand and led her large group of subordinates, driving various modified vehicles, towards the Great Forest. Master, it seems we're heading in a different direction than Pyro's convoy. In the lead vehicle, Juggernaut, whose convoy had deviated from its course, looked on with confusion. Pyro's convoy lost contact in the Pyramid Desert region, but now they were heading towards the Great Forest region. One was heading west, and the other east. Cassandra smiled knowingly. We won't go to the convoy, there's definitely no one there anymore. Let's go to the rebel base of Little Firefly. Master, how do you know their base location? Juggernaut asked, feigning surprise. Cassandra looked at Juggernaut as if you were an idiot. Because they're as stupid as you. Knowing I can read minds, they still haven't changed their base location. They've been stuck there. Over the years, whenever a new character was added to the story, the rebels would try to pull them over to her side, wanting to fight against her. She found this amusing, which was why she hadn't wiped them out outright. In fact, having killed so many rebels, she already knew their base location through mind reading. The convoy sped along, quickly entering the Great Forest and finding the stone house that was only half exposed above the ground, along with Wolverine and Deadpool chatting idly in front of it. So many people, looks like we're finally not bored anymore. Deadpool excitedly drew his twin swords from his back. George told him and Wolverine to wait outside, saying he'd only come to save his universe after sending everyone back to their original universes. So he was really anxious and bored. Could it be Chacha? Oh no, it's a woman. Looks like that psychopath they were talking about. Deadpool's eyes lit up when he saw a bald head emerge from the car door after it stopped. But he immediately realized his mistake. The bald head was a woman. Based on the group that emerged from the car behind, including Juggernaut, he immediately guessed the bald woman's true identity. It must be Cassandra, the Human Torch had mentioned. She was also the most powerful mutant in the void. Psychopathic woman, little darling, you really don't know how to talk. Cassandra stretched out a finger and pointed downwards, forcibly pressing Deadpool's entire body into the ground, leaving only his head sticking out. There were too many Deadpools in the void. He wasn't a rare find, so she wasn't interested. Call out the guy who saved you. I want to play with him. Headmaster, someone's looking for you. Wolverine, who had already extended his claws to attack, saw Deadpool instantly subdued and immediately withdrew them, obediently calling for George. Such a formidable enemy should be left to the even more capable Headmaster to handle. Chapter 582 Methods to Advance to a Single Universe. December 23, 2024. Author, Guakianchuan. Little Wolverine, I despise you. Seeing Wolverine obediently sit down, Deadpool immediately howled. The real Wolverine he used to know was someone who, no matter how powerful the enemy, would never show the slightest fear or hesitation, and would just charge straight in. Wolverine nonchalantly lit a cigar. There's no way around it. Even the biggest problems can be solved by the Headmaster. I don't need to risk my life anymore. I'm used to it. In the past, to save people, he had to fight, had to risk his life. He was the most resilient shield, enduring even the most painful pain with gritted teeth. But now, that's no longer necessary. Since following George has become everyone's strongest and unbreakable shield. Even he himself has become one of those being protected. So when encountering an enemy he knew he couldn't defeat, his subconscious instinct was no longer to rush in and fight, but to directly call for George. I'm not envious at all. Hearing Wolverine's answer, Deadpool tilted his head back, holding back his tears. This is so interesting. Even my brother couldn't trust Wolverine this much? It seems this prey is even more interesting than I imagined. Cassandra's interest deepened. She had been in the void for so many years, and had seen many similar characters from various universes. Like Deadpool, there were dozens in the void, always causing trouble, yet they were impossible to kill. But Wolverine, none of them. She had always felt Wolverine was quite special, and what kind of being trusted so much by someone so special? At that moment, the door of the stone house was pushed open, and George walked out. Is this the legendary walking into trap? He hadn't even gone to find Cassandra, and she had already brought all her subordinates to find him. Wasn't this practically offering herself up? While recording the coordinates of various universes, he had gradually gained some insights. His current strength, in the Marvel Universe, was probably at the celestial level, and quite high up. Because he had learned different magic in various worlds, although his strength was at the celestial level, his combat methods were endless, allowing him to deal with all kinds of enemies, very comprehensive. However, the celestial level is still the celestial level, and there's a huge gap between it and the monoverse level, let alone the multiverse level. He currently has two ideas for evolving from the celestial level to the monoverse level. The first is to create his own dimensional world. This way, like most demons in Marvel, as long as he stays in his own dimensional world, He can unleash Multiverse-level combat power with the help of that world. The larger and more complete the dimensional world, the stronger he will be, and when he evolves into the multiverse, his power will also reach the multiverse level. Many demons in Marvel devour worlds to continuously strengthen their own dimensional worlds. Like Dormammu of the Dark Dimension, who always wants to invade Earth in various universes, devouring the core of Earth's universe to devour the entire universe and expand his own dimension. He himself has been pursuing this idea, and currently, combining spatial magic from various worlds, he has already carved out his own space. He is also learning the magic to create various life forms, learning how to create a complete world. Once this world is created, his power will increase dramatically, directly entering the Multiverse level, and becoming one of the strongest Multiverse level beings. Because he created his own world, while many single universe level demons in Marvel simply forcibly occupied an existing dimension. For example, Dormammu was originally a human sorcerer who later occupied the existing Dark Dimension to become the Dark Lord Dormammu. Mephisto, on the other hand, was merely one of many powerful demons who, through various schemes and tricks, eliminated demons one by one to seize the Hell Dimension and become its lord. Of course, creating a world on his own would be incredibly difficult. Not only in terms of space and life, but also in terms of the fundamental laws governing that world. Therefore, many powerful demons who can create their own dimensions spend billions or even trillions of years creating and perfecting them. Fortunately, he has an advantage in this regard. He can not only study the laws of the Marvel Universe but also research the laws of other worlds through magic. Comparing, learning, integrating, and transforming these laws is far more efficient than simply studying the laws of the Marvel Universe. The second method is even simpler: enhance one's own magical power and break through to the single universe level through sheer strength. Aside from a very few who created their own dimensional worlds or seized existing ones, most of Marvel's demons and powerful beings don't possess their own. They rely solely on raw power. The most typical example is the Celestials. Newly born Celestials are not even at the level of a Celestial father, while the ancient Celestials who have lived long enough can even reach the multiverse level. However, breaking through to the single universe or multiverse level through self-cultivation is no easier than creating a dimensional world to advance. Take himself as an example, relying solely on his Marvel self and cultivating using meditation, it would take trillions of years to reach the single universe level. Fortunately, he has an advantage in this regard: the cultivation efficiency of his clones is cumulative. The more clones, the higher the efficiency. If he had trillions of clones, he could advance directly to the single universe level in less than a year. Unfortunately, he currently only has 7 clones, so it would still take him nearly a trillion years to advance. Just now, while recording coordinates in various universes, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration and found a way to accelerate his power increase. In fact, this is a method used by many demons in Marvel. That is, to develop his own followers, borrow his own magic, and collect interest in the process, thereby accelerating his own power increase. If the demon god can do it, so can he. The key is that he also has clones, who can operate in the same way. As long as his capital is substantial enough, the more he lends out, the more interest he collects. This will greatly shorten the time it takes him to reach the single universe level. Once he reaches the single universe level, he can lend not only in his own world, but also in other parallel universes whose coordinates are recorded. The only difficulty is that he doesn't know the methods those demon gods use to develop followers and borrow their power. But he can ask the Ancient One about this. The Ancient One should know some methods, as she has dealt with demon gods quite a bit. Or, according to the memories he searched in his new clones world, there's a demonic technique in the Kwangsing sect that has a similar effect. Shen Chong, one of the 4 madmen of Kwangsing, is the root of all evil. Chapter 509: Exhaling Breath and Binding Spirits. December 23, 2024. Author, Guaqianchuan. Shen Chong's technique is called usury. He can lend his abilities to others, and those who gain this ability can absorb the ki within him by killing him. However, for each person killed, a certain percentage of the absorbed ki goes to Shen Chong as interest. Moreover, the interest increases with each additional kill. As the amount he receives diminishes, those who borrow from Shen Chong often descend into a killing spree. This technique is somewhat similar to the demon god's lending method, but the side effects are too great and need improvement. Otherwise, his followers will become murderous maniacs in every world, making him a veritable evil god, an object of universal hatred. Simultaneously creating dimensional worlds and enhancing his own strength, achieving a single universe level is just around the corner. What's your name? Seeing George appear, Cassandra took 2 steps closer, scrutinizing him like a pet. Just call me George, George replied with a smile. Thinking about how he could soon locate a large number of universes, and how the people in these universes could potentially be his lenders, he was in a very good mood. George? Does your universe even have such a person? Cassandra turned to look at her cattle, who all shook their heads. It seems you're a special existence. Based on her experience over the years, many people with even a little strength have some fame in various universes. Even if their appearances and personalities differ, their names and some very prominent features are still the same. Like Deadpool, whether it's male Deadpool, female Deadpool, dog Deadpool, or baby Deadpool, they're all basically called Deadpool, and they all wear similar clothes. They like to use dual swords and dual guns, and most of them have extremely strong healing abilities. But she had no recollection of the name George, nor of his abilities or attire. No one like him had ever appeared in the void either. Normally, someone with such strength wouldn't be unknown. You're quite right. I'm in a good mood now, so I'll give you 2 choices. 1. Bring your people and submit to me. 2. Die. George waved his hand, and Deadpool was lifted into the air, carried by his dual swords back to Wolverine's side. Cassandra, upon hearing George's words, paused for a moment, then burst into laughter, clutching her stomach. You want me to submit? Do you know who I am? This is the first time I've heard such a funny joke. It seems you need a lesson to realize your own strength. She pointed a finger at George and gently pressed down, a powerful force acting on him, slamming him downwards. Magneto said something similar back then, and I crushed his helmet, and the head inside it. Perhaps it's you who needs to realize your strength. Faced with this sudden power, George's body was instantly covered in golden light, directly neutralizing the force. Then, in a flash, he was in front of Cassandra, grabbing her by the neck and lifting her up. Cassandra was very strong. Her ability to kill Magneto and Professor X meant she had surpassed the limits of a level 4 mutant, reaching the level of a level 5 mutant. Her main ability was telekinesis. Mind reading required inserting a hand into the head, far inferior to Professor X's. She could also control her cell regeneration, instantly healing from multiple injuries. In terms of healing factor, she's on par with Wolverine and Deadpool. However, although she's considered a level 5 mutant, there's still a significant gap between her and Phoenix. While she might not be weaker than Phoenix in terms of telekinesis, Phoenix's strength lies not only in telekinesis but also in the Phoenix Force within her. The Phoenix Force, as one of the 3 ancient powers in the Marvel Universe, possesses multiverse-level power. Therefore, Cassandra's overall ability is at most at the sub-celestial level. George, even without transforming into a dragon, possesses celestial-level strength, and if he does transform, he's among the top celestials. Your speed isn't slow, but do you think you can hurt me like this? Despite being choked and unable to breathe, Cassandra showed no pain on her face, instead forcefully pushing towards George with both hands. Even if her neck were broken, it wouldn't harm her. I used less than 1% of my power just now. This is my full strength. A telekinetic force 100 times stronger than before was suddenly applied to George. An ordinary person would likely be crushed into pulp. George was clearly no ordinary person. His powerful physique, combined with the defense of the golden light charm, couldn't be completely shaken by the force. The golden light only trembled slightly. He has some skill, but that's about it. Facing Cassandra's maximum psychic attack, George remained unmoved. The two were simply not on the same level. This is impossible. Cassandra's pupils contracted, and the composure on her face vanished instantly. Since she fully developed her abilities, no one had been able to withstand her full-force psychic attack. Even those known for their physical toughness had their flesh and blood instantly torn apart by the psychic power, leaving only bones. Unable to believe that George could withstand her full-force psychic attack, Cassandra launched another attack, but she still couldn't break through his defenses. Finally, she could only say, I admit your defense is strong, but you can't kill me. You know nothing about this world. George unleashed astonishing lightning, electrocuting Cassandra's body until it trembled violently. As she desperately used her abilities to repair her charred body, she slightly opened her mouth. HMPH. A burst of white vapor was sprayed solidly onto Cassandra's body, instantly expelling her soul from her body. He was using the expelling breath technique he'd obtained from Zio, which allowed him to blast an enemy's soul out of their body using just 2 utterances. How could this be? My body, discovering her soul had been blasted out, Cassandra was terrified and immediately tried to return to her physical body. However, her body had already been instantly electrocuted into charcoal, turning into a handful of black ash. Her body's self-healing ability relied entirely on telekinesis. With her soul blasted out, her body naturally couldn't regenerate quickly, rendering her no different from an ordinary person. Spirit binding, black energy emanated from George's body, binding Cassandra. No matter how much she struggled, she couldn't break free, and finally, her entire soul was captured by George. Expelling the soul with an exhale, then capturing it with spirit binding, this combination of techniques was a perfect match. Stun them. After dealing with Cassandra, George waved his hands, unleashing a series of stun spells and lightning bolts. In the blink of an eye, all of Cassandra's men lay on the ground. Chapter 510 Time-Shattering Warrior. 2024-12-24 Author, Kakagal. That's it. Seeing the great demon of the void instantly defeated, Deadpool couldn't help but make a shocked face, sucking his thumb. He was already startled by the instant kill of the progenitor of the vampires, but that was understandable. After all, while he couldn't defeat the progenitor, he wasn't completely powerless. But Cassandra was different. Her strength was clearly several levels above his own. She could subdue him with a wave of her hand, and even Magneto and Professor X were no match for her. Such a powerful being was dealt with in just a few moves by George, and not only was her body destroyed, but her soul was also taken. This is just the tip of the iceberg of the headmaster's power. Wolverine flicked away his cigarette butt and patted Deadpool on the shoulder. Do you know why I called him headmaster? Is your school still hiring? Deadpool nodded frantically. Wolverine looked him up and down, then shook his head. We recruited a teacher. You, take them in. After George collected Cassandra's henchmen into the void, he turned to Deadpool. Alright, let's go back and save your world now. Most of those sent into the void had already been devoured by the monster Helios. Only a few survived. With Cassandra's rampage, besides these henchmen, the only remaining resistance organization was the group of immortal Deadpools. And those immortal Deadpools, their universe seemed to have vanished. So, for him, there was nothing of value left in the void. He could leave now. What's that? Just as George opened the portal centered on Deadpool, a massive storm suddenly arose in the distance. A dragon-shaped plume of black smoke flew rapidly towards them. The monster Helios, feeling the all-annihilating power within the black smoke, George couldn't help but stroke his chin. Perhaps, it's an avatar of annihilation. The Marvel Universe has 5 cosmic entities: Eternity, Death, Infinity, Annihilation, and Galactus. Eternity is the embodiment of time, the sum of all Marvel's multiverses and dimensions, and the essence of the universe. Death is the goddess of death, the source, creator, and manipulator of all life and souls in the universe, governing the death of all life. Infinity represents space and matter, managing all space in the multiverse. Annihilation is the manifestation of nothingness, capable of reducing everything in the Marvel multiverse to nothingness. Its power is almost immeasurable. Galactus is a cosmic giant, existing in various Marvel universes, feeding on planets. Its power fluctuates depending on how much it eats. This was some information he had learned in his previous life. And this monster, Helios, can wipe out everything in the void. Kang even used it to eliminate countless timelines and parallel universes. It's hard not to suspect that it might be an avatar of annihilation. Let's go. Before the monster Helios arrived, George led Deadpool and Wolverine through the portal. It's best to avoid messing with someone like Helios, whose background is unclear, since there's no benefit to be gained. I thank you on behalf of Wade for choosing this car. He's not here today, but you can contact me if you have any problems later. In the parking lot behind a car dealership in New York, Peter was finalizing the details of his purchase with a family. His good friend Wade had been in a bad mood lately. His car sales were poor, and he'd even been scolded by his boss. He wanted to help Wade sell this car so Wade would be in a better mood when he returned. Wade had always been the best and most capable superhero in his heart. Oh, Peter, I love you forever. Just then, a portal opened behind Peter, and seeing Peter selling him a car, Deadpool immediately hugged him from behind. Wade, I love you forever too. Noticing Wade's appearance and seeing him back in his suit, Peter was deeply moved. The superhero Deadpool, who fought evil, had finally returned from his despair. This scene, Wolverine couldn't help but cover his face, and George's lips twitched as well. It was too abstract. The aesthetically pleasing titanic embrace on Deadpool's waist always felt passionate. If he hadn't known Deadpool's bizarre character, he would have thought the two of them were gay. Let's go. We still need to find Paradox and stop him from activating the time-shattering machine. Yeah, let's find that bastard first. Deadpool released Peter and followed George out of the parking lot. Wade, I clocked in for you this morning. Peter waved to Wade with a look of satisfaction, and Wade blew him a kiss. Direction manifestation, Paradox. Following the golden directional icon, George directly conjured a ball of iron sand and flew Wolverine and Deadpool toward Manhattan. A few minutes later, they landed at a subway entrance. On the surface, it was a subway entrance, but in reality, it was a small base of the Time Mutation Bureau in Universe 10005. Inside was a time-shattering machine, and Paradox was currently in the base calibrating it with his subordinates. The activation of the time-shattering machine is extremely complex, taking at least several hours to complete. You guys deal with Paradox and his henchmen. I'll handle the time-shattering machine, using an opening spell to open the base gates, and after reading the memories of the guards at the entrance, George gave the order to Deadpool and Wolverine before heading towards the second basement level where the time-shattering machine was located. Paradox and his henchmen were just ordinary people. As long as you watch their shearing rods, they posed little threat. Wolverine and Deadpool could easily handle them. His target wasn't just the coordinates of this universe, but also the time-shattering machine. A machine capable of directly shattering an entire universe's timeline. How could he miss such a thing? Although he wasn't on the technological path and couldn't understand its principles, he could modify it to some extent, turning it into a magical artifact. Knockout. After taking down the time guards along the way, George found the time-shattering machine, placed his hand on it, and began the alchemical modification. Awaken. Powerful magic enveloped the entire time-shattering machine, using an awakening spell to activate its intelligence and a mimicry spell to change its form. Soon, the entire Time Crusher began to transform like a transformer, evolving from a desktop form into a humanoid machine. Time Crusher Warrior greets Master. Very good. Can you still crush the timeline of a universe? George asked, looking at the magical Time Crusher he had modified. The Time Crusher Warrior respectfully nodded. Yes, but Master needs to input enough magic power, or collect enough energy. Chapter 511 Time Mutation Management Bureau. 24, 2024 Author, Guaqianchuan. That's not a problem. George waved his hand with satisfaction, storing the Time Crusher into his own space. With his current strength, he could only destroy one planet at most. To destroy an entire universe, he would need to at least reach the single universe level, and a rather powerful one at that. However, with his modified Time Crusher, as long as he inputted enough magic power, he could do that too. Coincidentally, magic power was exactly what he had in abundance. In the future, if a special situation required the destruction of a universe, this would be a very good weapon. After taking away the Time Crusher and spending another 5 minutes locating the universe's coordinates, George returned to the base's underground level. Meanwhile, on the underground level, Deadpool and Wolverine had already dealt with all the guards and were beating Paradox mercilessly. Or more accurately, Deadpool was torturing him, while Wolverine was watching the show. Quickly, tell me, how can you stop my universe from collapsing? Deadpool used 2 knives to pin Paradox's hands to the ground, then stepped on Paradox's penis, grinding it back and forth repeatedly. If you don't talk, I'll shove both knives into your ass and rub them back and forth until they catch fire. I really don't know. I was wrong. Please let me go. Your universe will take thousands more years to slowly collapse. I will definitely find a way. Paradox wailed and begged for mercy. At this moment, George walked over. No need to ask him. I know how to stop your universe from collapsing. Oh, great, Headmaster, I love it. Upon hearing this, Deadpool jumped up happily, landing right on someone's testicles, and then pounced to give George a grateful hug. But George naturally didn't like being hugged by a man, and with a flick of his hand, he used a knockback spell to send Deadpool flying. Cover your ears. He closed his eyes and activated his ability. In the safe room at the bottom of the base that recharged the time-shattering machine, the wires in the matter and antimatter energy chambers instantly popped out and connected together. Boom! A deafening explosion came from the bottom level, causing the entire ground to shake. In the movie, Wolverine and Deadpool used their bodies to connect matter and antimatter energy, restoring the universe from the brink of collapse. Here, he directly used his abilities to connect the two, with the same effect. Check it out, see if this universe has returned to normal. After the explosion, George turned to the programmers from the Time Mutation Bureau who were sitting there trembling with fear. The programmers immediately nodded, operated the machines for a while, and then simultaneously burst out incredulous voices. It's true, after monitoring, this universe has now returned to normal. Combining matter and antimatter energy had such an effect. This was the first time they had encountered such an effect. Great. Deadpool also got up from the ground upon hearing this. He had finally saved his universe. What's going on here? Just then, beams of light appeared in the base, and a plump, dark-skinned woman emerged from the beams with a large group of Time Guardians. Her subordinates had just reported to her that a time management crusher in Mr. Paradox's Universe 10005 had been activated without permission. This was no small matter, and she immediately gathered her men and rushed over. It was them. They tried to activate the time management crusher without permission, killed many of my colleagues, and severely injured my hands and genitals. If you had arrived any later, I would have been killed too. Paradox, upon seeing the plump black woman, immediately pointed at George and the other two, making a distorted accusation. The plump black woman's face showed suspicion, but her expression changed drastically upon seeing Wolverine. You shouldn't be here. The Wolverine of this universe is dead. You are a variant that smuggled in from another universe. Capture them and send them to the void. Hearing the plump black woman's order, the Time Guardians immediately rushed over. However, they had barely taken a step when they were struck by a blue magical beam, freezing them in place. I think you'd better not act rashly. George stepped to the opposite side of the plump black woman, touched her forehead, and transmitted the general outline of the events into her mind. After receiving the truth, the plump, dark-skinned woman hesitated for a moment. Paradox's unauthorized use of the time-shattering machine will be punished according to the rules of the Time Mutation Bureau, banishing him to the void to fend for himself. However, your unauthorized traversal of the universe also violated the regulations. Given that you did so to save this universe and indeed prevented its collapse, we will not pursue the matter further. You can simply return to your own universes. Wolverine was an innocent bystander, caught on the crossfire. But George, besides saving Wolverine, also sent several mutants back to their original universes and secretly modified and took away the time-shattering machine. It couldn't be let off so easily. However, in the scene that flashed through her mind, she also saw George's terrifying power in instantly killing Cassandra. If she angered George, it would be a huge problem for the entire Time Mutation Bureau. So, after careful consideration, she decided to temporarily refrain from pursuing the matter. No problem, we'll return to our own universes now. Seeing that the plump, dark-skinned woman had made a decision, George released the control over the Time Guardians, smiled, nodded, and opened the portal back to his own universe. When he transmitted the information to the fat, dark-skinned woman's brain, he didn't cut out the scenes of sending Blade back and modifying the time-shattering machine. His main purpose was to see her reaction. If she wanted to see these things, she could easily retrieve them later using the Time Mutation Bureau's special equipment. Rather than waiting for retribution, it was better to proactively tell her, making it seem like he had no malicious intent. He didn't want to clash with the Time Mutation Bureau because of Loki, the god of stories behind them. But if the Time Mutation Bureau insisted on causing him trouble over these matters, he wouldn't mind teaching them a lesson. Fortunately, things developed as he expected. Given his immense power, the fat, dark-skinned woman didn't pursue the matter further, choosing to turn a blind eye. Thank you. I'll visit you in your universe when I have time. Deadpool waved goodbye reluctantly as George and Wolverine left. Once everything was over, the plump, dark-skinned woman, having dealt with the paradox, immediately ordered her subordinates, retrieve all the data on George from the universe. A figure who had never appeared in their sights possessed such terrifying power. This was very strange. Countless universes and countless timelines exist. A powerful figure might be an ordinary person in a few universes, but it's impossible for them to be ordinary in all universes and exceptionally powerful only in one. For example, Peter Parker is Spider-Man in most universes, but in some worlds Gwen is Spider-Man, and Peter Parker is just an ordinary person. This is normal. If Peter Parker is an ordinary person in most universes, but in only one universe is Peter Parker Spider-Man, then that's very strange. George is like this now, ordinary in other universes, yet possessing extraordinary power in only one. This was the first time she had encountered such a situation. Chapter 512 Yang got acquired. 25, 2024 author, Guaqianchuan Master Fang. How about it? The Tongshan Talisman allows you to exchange for a Yang spirit, and I can guarantee that without the permission of Bayun Temple, I will not pass on the method of exchanging for a Yang spirit to anyone in this world. In the inner courtyard of Bayun Temple, George took a sip of the finest iguanine tea and spoke to a hunched old Taoist priest sitting opposite him. After dealing with the Wang family, he immediately used phantom teleportation to return to Beijing, leaving the subsequent matters concerning the Wang family to the Xiangxia Society as planned. He wouldn't waste his precious time on seizing the Wang family's property. After a short rest at his home in Beijing, gathering the various sex cultivation techniques and Taoist arts he had collected, he went directly to Bayun Temple to meet with the current abbot, Feng Dongshan. Mr. Jin, you are a friend of our Bayun Temple. After the Luotian Grand Ceremony, Xingyang and Xia Erming spoke highly of you. If you really want to learn the Taoist arts of our Bayun Temple, I can have Xingyang teach you directly. There's no need to trade the Tongshan scroll. Feng Dongshan smiled at George, giving his answer almost without hesitation. The news that Wang Ai, one of the 10 elders, led a group of experts from the Wang family to besiege Jin Baobao, attempting to forcibly seize the Tongshan scroll, only to be wiped out by Jin Baobao alone, had already spread like wildfire throughout the world of supernatural beings a few days ago. Now everyone believes that Jin Baobao's strength may not be inferior to that of a top-tier celestial master. If Jin Baobao were willing to join the Bayun Temple, even as a nominal disciple, it would be far more valuable to the Bayun Temple than the Tongshan scroll. No, I've always preferred fair trade and don't like to be greedy for small gains. Upon hearing this, George waved his hand, refusing Feng Dongshan's offer. While it was said that Liu Xingyang would teach him unconditionally, the real intention was to recruit him into the Bayun Temple. There's no such thing as a free lunch, and he wasn't going to tie himself to the Bayun Temple. It wasn't that he was afraid of being implicated by the Bayun Temple. With his current strength in this world, he was already invincible. He was simply afraid of trouble. Right now, he only had some personal connections with Liu Xingyang and Wang Ming. If they encountered any trouble in the future, he would help them if he had time, and otherwise, it wouldn't matter. Whatever happened to the Bayun Temple was none of his concern. But if he joined the Bayun Temple, what would he do if it encountered trouble in the future? Helping would waste his cultivation time, while not helping would leave him feeling guilty, and an uneasy mind wouldn't allow him to cultivate in peace. The key was that the sex lineage was ancient, it couldn't be ignored after a few decades. Therefore, exchanging the Tongshan talisman for the Yang God was the most worry-free option for him. Because it was simply a transaction. Mr. Jin is of noble character, so let's do as Mr. Jin says. Feng Dongshan wasn't too surprised by George's answer. He was just trying it out. If it worked, great. If not, he'd still make a big profit by getting the Tongshan talisman. Actually, this was also a test of George's character. If George agreed without hesitation, he would have to think twice. His quick agreement suggested that George might not be willing to take responsibility and just wanted to get something for free. Conversely, George's unwillingness to take the technique for free proved that he had his own moral bottom line and his character was somewhat reliable. Since he said he wouldn't share the Bayun Temple's techniques after the transaction, he would most likely keep his promise. This is a copy of the Tongshan talisman. Seeing Feng Dongshan agree, George didn't waste any more words and directly took out a copy of the Tongshan talisman and placed it on the table. He wasn't worried that Bayun Temple would use the Tongshan talisman for a trade like he did. Firstly, the 8 extraordinary techniques are inherently a hot potato. Whoever obtains them will attract the covetous eyes of all the extraordinary beings in the world. Without sufficient strength, revealing them will only lead to being devoured. Bayun Temple is a long-established Taoist temple, but its members are few, and its overall strength is insignificant in the entire world of extraordinary beings. Secondly, he promised not to pass on Bayun Temple's Taoist methods to anyone else in this world, so Bayun Temple naturally cannot sell the Tongshan talisman in the transaction. Otherwise, the fate of the Wang family is still fresh in everyone's mind. Not only Bayun Temple, but other sects also made the same transactions under the same conditions. Tongshan talisman, I'll accept it. As for the cultivation methods and Taoist techniques, let this old body of mine personally pass them on to you. Feng Dongshan picked up the Tongshan talisman, sighed, and then replied to George. Late at night, George, Having obtained the Yangshan Taoist method from Baiyun Temple, used Phantom Shift to return home. As soon as he returned, he heard the doorbell ring. This guy's back so late again, and without his keys. Looks like he'll be moving out soon. He scanned the doorway with his mental energy and saw Jin Yuan standing there, drunk. He shook his head. Now that he understood the ins and outs of this world, Jin Yuan's ordinary identity was worthless. So, in a few days, he would erase Jin Yuan and his family's memories of him, just like Hermione erased her memories of her parents. Of course, since he had occupied Jin Yuan's body, even if it was just a corpse, he still owed them a favor. He would use magic to cleanse their bodies while erasing their memories, allowing Jin Yuan and the others to live a few years longer than normal. As for money, Jin Yuan and the others weren't short of cash. What they lacked was a sense of accomplishment in life. Business is business, but try to drink less in the future. Opening the door, George helped the unsteady Jin Yuan into the house, channeling some magic to help him sober up. This isn't business, it's a university reunion, organized by Wang Yi, whom I haven't seen in ages. He even said he saw you a few days ago when he was staying at Longhu Mountain, Jin Yuan explained, pouring herself a glass of water after regaining her senses. George's heart skipped a beat upon hearing this. Yes, we met. It's a coincidence, isn't it? What does Master Wang want with this gathering? Wang Yi should possess one of the 8 extraordinary techniques, Feng Hao Qi Men, and since they're both in Beijing, he might use the Tongshan Lu to see if he can exchange it for it. Jin Yuan finished her water in one gulp and couldn't help but laugh. This guy's finally figured things out. He actually wants to partner with us in business, and he said he's been expelled from Wudang and isn't a Taoist anymore. I knew it. Why become a Taoist at such a young age? Expelled from Wudang. Interesting. A young master of Wang Yi's caliber would be cherished by any major sect. How could he possibly be expelled? The only reason was that Wang Yi had revealed the Feng Hao Qi Men technique at the Luotian Grand Ceremony, and some people had already recognized him. To avoid Wudang being affected, they resorted to this drastic measure. Go take a look, he greeted Jin Yuan and went back to his room. He immediately separated a thought form and left it at home, while his main body teleported away, tracking Wang Yi's location. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 513 The Heavenly Scroll, Should We Take It? December 25, 2024 Author, Guak Yanchuan. Using the tracking spell, he quickly found Wang Yi in a large square. However, Wang Yi was being beaten by 3 masked youths, 2 men and 1 woman, or more accurately, Wang Yi was beating up the 2 men and 1 woman. Is this some kind of battle between 3 heroes against Lu Bu in the middle of the night? Seeing the 2 men and 1 woman brought down by Wang Yi, George slowly descended from the air. Jin Bao Bao? Wang Yi looked surprised when he saw George. George waved with a smile. Good evening, Master Wang. My sister said she made you drink a lot. But you don't seem to have drunk much, Jin Bao Bao? Which Jin Bao Bao? Wang Yi, could he be the Jin Bao Bao who won first place in the Luotian Grand Ceremony? Hearing Wang Yi call out George's name, the 2 men and 1 woman immediately jumped up from the ground, looking at George with adoration, their voices trembling. Wang Yi was also completely bewildered. He's a member of this huge family, is this really necessary? Zhuge Qing had just called him. The 3 who attacked him were members of the younger generation of this huge family and meant no harm. They simply wanted to see if he, who could defeat the leading figure of the younger generation of this huge family, lived up to his reputation. This huge family is a long-established and prestigious family. Even if Jin Bao Bao defeated Zhang Lingyu and won first place, this kind of behavior wouldn't be expected. Yes, he's the Jin Bao Bao who defeated Zhang Lingyu, it really is him. Oh my god, my idol, Mr. Jin, could you sign my autograph? The girl with a bruise around her eye quickly pulled a pen from her pocket, rushed to George, and, unable to find paper, simply rolled up her sleeve to reveal her fair arm. Sign it here. The other 2 were also filled with excitement. Mr. Jin, it's rumored that you single-handedly wiped out the Wang family patriarch and all the experts. Is that true? Not entirely. I only killed Wang Ai and the experts he brought. As for those who didn't come, I didn't do that. George paused for a moment, but still took the pen and signed his name on the girl's arm. He hadn't expected that in just a few days, he already had fans in the supernatural world. What? You killed Wang Ai and most of the Wang family's experts? Wang Yi, standing nearby, was so shocked he almost jumped up. He had only gone down the mountain 2 days early to return to Beijing. How could such a huge event have occurred in the supernatural world? Wang Yi, you don't know, do you? The entire Wang family has now been wiped out of the supernatural world. Mr. Jin and the Old Master are now known as the Two Masters. One of the young men explained the biggest recent event in the supernatural world to Wang Yi. I've been busy with family matters these past few days and missed such important news. Wang Yi was also quite shocked. Ever since he demonstrated Feng Hao Qi Men at the Luotian Grand Ceremony, he had been targeted. So he left the Luotian Grand Ceremony early, shaking off the various forces monitoring him, and returned home, also voluntarily leaving Wuding Mountain. However, upon returning, he discovered that his family was also being monitored, and their home had been thoroughly searched by skilled supernatural beings. For the past few days, he had been preoccupied with how to protect his family, and hadn't been following any news from the supernatural world on forums. Master Wang, you seem to be in high spirits, sparring here so late, George teased Wang Yi after signing his name. Wang Yi scratched his head and explained the situation. I just spoke with Huge Qing on the phone, he's already arrived after landing. I had Brother Do book a Cantonese restaurant. Since we've run into each other, why don't we join him? Inviting George to dinner wasn't out of admiration or respect, but simply because he had borrowed a considerable amount of money from Jin Yuan a few hours earlier, and now that he'd unexpectedly met a brother, Jin Bao, he felt obligated to be polite. Given his personality, even if George was incredibly powerful, he would at most be surprised, but wouldn't try to curry favor. Well, since I have nothing else to do, and Master Wang has been so kind to invite me, I can't refuse. Let's go together, George nodded without any hesitation. He had come specifically to exchange Feng Hao Qi Men with Wang Yi, so naturally he wouldn't leave now. Wang Yi sighed inwardly upon hearing this. It's not that he's being so kind, it's just a polite gesture. For some reason, he felt that tonight's encounter was not a coincidence, and he had a bad feeling. Mr. Wang, the car is full. Please wait a moment, I'll call another one. Seeing that the sparring session was over and Wang Yi had brought 4 people over, Brother Du, the Wang family's steward, quickly took out his phone to make a call. The car he had just had delivered was a normal 5-seater, but now there were 6 of them, so he needed to call another one. No need for that trouble. George stepped forward to the 5-seater car and gently tapped it. Mimetic transformation. The ordinary 5-seater Mercedes immediately transformed into a luxurious extended Rolls-Royce. Now you can sit down. In the world of magic apprentices, the mimicry and transformation magic can conjure up all sorts of cars, even airplanes, but you need to know how to drive them. Or, transforming into a giant eagle would be more suitable. Holy crap, there's such a spell? If this were used to produce cars, we'd be rolling in money. Mr. Wang, people in your industry are truly incredible. Brother Du was stunned to see George's Mercedes transform into a Rolls-Royce with such a small amount of magic. However, he wasn't the only one stunned. Wang Yi and the 3 from this huge family were also astonished. They had never seen such magic before. You see, in the world of supernatural beings, the major families and sects still need to conduct business normally to make money. This was true before, and it remains true now. The Xiangxia group, the Wang family, the Lu family, the Gao family, and so on, all have their own enterprises and companies. Even the Guangxing sect has many companies. Otherwise, if they relied on magic to steal or rob, or engage in illegal activities, Nadu Tong wouldn't let them get away with it. If there were a magic spell like this, turning a car worth a couple $100,000 into one worth millions, it would be enough to become a leading enterprise in the country or even the world in no time. Truly worthy of being called a master, it's truly amazing. The 3 members of this huge family looked at George with even more admiration. They were all the same age, and Jin Bao was probably even younger than them, yet he possessed such strength and magical skill. No wonder he could be called on par with the old master. After picking up Huge Qing in the extended luxury Rolls-Royce, they arrived at the Guangdong restaurant Yinding Zhuan that Wang Yi had booked. Not long after they sat down, George directly took out a Tongshan Lu, a type of talisman, and said to Wang Yi, Master Wang, would you like the Tongshan Lu? PFFT, Wang Yi immediately spat out the tea he had just drunk, and the 4 members of this huge family were also stunned by George's actions. Brother, this is the Tongshan talisman, not some pirated book that costs 10 yuan on the street. I know. How about trading the Tongshan talisman for your sorcerer of magic? Are you in? George pushed the Tongshan talisman in front of Wang Yi and asked again. Chapter 514 The Samadhi True Fire of the Wuhao Sect. 26, 2024 Author, Guaqianchuan. You're already so strong, why do you need my Taoist technique? It's not a good thing, and I'm not interested in the Tongshan Lu. Wang Yi pushed the Tongshan Lu back without hesitation. George's face showed a hint of surprise, because he could tell from his mental abilities that Wang Yi was telling the truth. Wang Yi genuinely felt that his Feng Hao Qimen was not a good thing, and indeed he wasn't interested in the Tongshan Lu, one of the 8 extraordinary techniques. Was there something wrong with Feng Hao Qimen? Or did he think that the 8 extraordinary techniques would attract wolves and didn't want him to suffer because of it? It should be the first one. The second one wouldn't be a problem for others, but it wouldn't apply to him. If he was afraid that the 8 extraordinary techniques would bring danger, he already had the Tongshan Lu, which would bring danger as well, and Wang Yi should now know that with his strength, he was not afraid of these dangers. What is the purpose of cultivation? Isn't it to explore more of the unknown, to move forward step by step? I want to go further than anyone else. Therefore, I need to observe the methods of various schools, to gather the strengths of all schools to aid my cultivation. If your methods have problems, don't worry, I will take the essence and discard the dross. Seeing that Wang was indeed not interested in the Tongshan talisman, George temporarily put it away. Gathering the strengths of all schools, that's too domineering. The 3 members of this huge family admired George even more, as they were still far behind their own family's methods. Zhuge Qing, who had a foxy look on his face, narrowed his eyes and thought to himself, gathering the strengths of all schools, it seems that this Jin Bao has quite the ambition. The future of the world of supernatural beings may not be peaceful. What does gathering the strengths of all schools mean? It means that Jin Bao needs to refer to the methods and techniques of various sects and families. How could the various sects and families easily hand over their methods and techniques? And looking at Jin Bao's behavior, he doesn't seem to be too rigid and upright. It's said that the Wang family coveted Jin Bao's Tongshan talisman and wanted to seize it, so Jin Bao killed them in self-defense. But now it seems that's not entirely true. Judging from Jin Bao's condition, he was clearly unharmed, indicating that he had a clear advantage in his battle with the Wang family. This means that if Jin Bao wanted, he could have crippled the Wang family and handed them over to the other 10 elders and Nadu Tong for judgment. But he killed them directly to eliminate future troubles. Of course, he's not saying that doing so is bad. If it were him, he would have done the same, as it would have been the most advantageous approach, eliminating the root of the problem. However, this is from a personal perspective. From the perspective of the entire supernatural world, it's not the best way to handle things. If it were the old master, he believes he would definitely not have eliminated the root of the problem like George did, but would have chosen a way that would be more conducive to the stability of the supernatural world. What does this mean? It means that in Jin Bao's eyes, the stability of the supernatural world is clearly not as important as his own life. Therefore, if he encounters obstacles on his path of combining the strengths of all schools, he will definitely find a way to remove those obstacles, which will naturally involve bloodshed. I see you seem to have encountered a similar problem to mine. Since you're not interested in the Tongshan talisman, how about this? I'll solve your problem, and I'll definitely solve it cleanly. Just exchange it for your Taoist techniques. George's eyes darted around as he once again proposed the terms of the deal. Wang Yi's problem was too simple for him. With the Wang family's example as a warning, he only needed to publicly side with Wang Yi, and he believed no one in the world of supernatural beings would dare to harass Wang Yi again. Unless they wanted to disappear from the world of supernatural beings like the Wang family. Forget it, I can solve my own problems. As for the Taoist techniques, I really can't give them to you, and I hope you understand. Wang Yi thought for a moment and finally refused George's terms. He believed that George could indeed help him solve his most troublesome problem, but apart from him, who else would dare to use Feng Hao Qimen? He didn't want to harm his childhood friend's younger brother. Besides, Feng Hao Qimen was ultimately passed down by Wu Deng, and although his master hadn't made any special provisions, he felt he had no right to pass it on to others at will. Think it over again. Contact me anytime when you've made up your mind. This is my number. George wrote down his phone number for Wang Yi, then thought for a moment, turned around and took out the Tong Xianlu again, placing it in front of Zhuge Qing. Zhuge Qing, how about trading the Tong Xianlu for your Wu Hao Qimen? Since the Feng Hao Qimen was unavailable for the time being, exchanging it for the Wu Hao School's Wu Hao Qimen wouldn't be bad. He could learn the basics first, making it easier to study later once he got the Feng Hao Qimen. In fact, the Wu Hao Qimen was a top-tier Taoist technique in this world, said to have been created by Zhuge Liang, the Prime Minister of Shuhan, who was said to be the greatest extraordinary person in history and only one step away from becoming an immortal. Moreover, he knew from the memories of those extraordinary people who had fought over the Tong Xianlu that the Wu Hao school also had a unique Taoist technique called Samadhi True Fire, which could burn the souls of all things in the world. Not only living beings, but also inanimate objects. For example, a truly breathtaking work of art, after being burned by the true fire, would not be noticeably changed by ordinary people, but would feel that the object had become dull and tasteless. Therefore, exchanging the Tongshan talisman for the Taoist arts of the Wu Hao sect wasn't a bad deal. This, Zhuge Qing, who had been watching the show, was stunned when he saw the Tongshan talisman handed to him, stammering and unsure how to respond. It was impossible not to want it. After all, the Tongshan talisman was one of the 8 extraordinary techniques, a unique skill that allowed one to perform various Taoist arts without needing to set up an altar, perform rituals, or draw cinnabar talismans. Although the Wu Hao sect wasn't specialized in this area, acquiring it would greatly enhance their resources. The Wu Hao sect excelled in Qimendunjia, Shenji, Pusun, and Bajiquan. If they obtained the Tongshan talisman, they would have another talisman to rely on. How could they not be tempted? However, he couldn't make such a decision on his own. Even his father had to consult with the clan elders before a decision could be made. Ahem, Mr. Jin, I can't answer you right now since you're so sudden. How about this? I'll call my father tonight and get back to you. No problem. Your father can contact me if he's interested. George nodded. He hadn't expected Zhuge Qing to give him an answer anyway. Mr. Jin, your Tongshan talisman. Zhuge Qing picked up the Tongshan talisman and reluctantly handed it back to George. George smiled and said, "It's all right, keep it for now. I'm sure your father will agree." Zhuge Qing was taken aback. His hand holding the Tongshan talisman froze, and his expression began to change, revealing a struggle. But after a moment, he placed the Tongshan talisman in front of George. "Let's wait until my father agrees." Based on his understanding of his father and the clan elders, this deal was definitely going to go through, so even if he took the Tongshan talisman early, or even started learning it tonight, it wouldn't matter. He had been convincing himself of this all along. In the end, reason prevailed. The Tongshan scroll absolutely could not be taken now, nor could it be secretly viewed. Otherwise, if an agreement couldn't be reached later, Jin Bao would have a reason to attack the Wu Hao sect. Chapter 515 The Deal at Zhuge Village. 26, 2024 Author, Guaqianchuan. She's a little fox too. Seeing that Zhuge Qing wasn't fooled, George sighed inwardly and took back the Tongshan talisman. Some things, you have to have a legitimate reason to do them, otherwise it's hard to feel at ease. If Zhuge Qing couldn't resist the temptation and looked at the Tongshan talisman, then it would basically be done. Even if the Wu Hao sect didn't agree, he could directly search Zhuge Qing's memories to obtain the cultivation technique. Because in his view, since Zhuge Qing had looked at the Tongshan talisman, it was fair for him to search Zhuge Qing's memories to obtain the cultivation technique. But if Zhuge Qing hadn't looked at it, he would feel embarrassed to do it. Speaking of which, Wang Yi and Zhuge Qing are really quite special. Wang Yi is a naturally carefree person with a pure heart. Refusing the Tongshan talisman means he truly has no greed. Zhuge Qing, on the other hand, is a deep thinker with human desires. He covets the Tongshan talisman, but he can restrain himself through acquired rationality. Actually, he personally felt that people like Zhuge Qing were even rarer. However, he still preferred Wang Yi, because he was similar to Zhuge Qing. Alright, it's getting late, I'll head back first. Contact me anytime if you need anything or if there are any results. George glanced at Wang Yi and Zhuge Qing, then vanished in a flash. The next morning, he received a call from Zhuge Qing. Mr. Jin, my father wants to meet with you to discuss things. He's taking a morning flight and should be here by noon. No need for that. Tell him to wait for me at home. I'll be there as soon as I hang up. After hanging up, George immediately disappeared. On the other side, Zhuge Qing, staying at the hotel, heard George's reply and murmured, "No way. Teleporting directly from Beijing to Zhejiang? That's over 1,000 kilometers. That's incredible." Teleportation techniques also exist in Chinese Taoist arts, such as the fire escape technique of the fire virtue sect. Top masters can teleport over 1,000 kilometers, but it requires pre-existing fire seeds. Or perhaps it was the golden escape flowing light technique created by the Guangxing Golden Light Master, capable of teleporting up to 500 kilometers, but requiring the prior crafting of talismans and consuming enormous resources, and thus lost to time. He had also learned a little about teleportation magic abroad. Very few wizards could teleport across cities, and the entire country of England, from south to north, was only about 900 kilometers. Father, Jin Bao said he'll come directly to talk to you. After hanging up, he immediately called his father, Zhuge, but before he could finish speaking, he heard a familiar voice on the other end of the line. "I am Jin Bao. Greetings to Patriarch Zhuge." That was fast indeed. Zhuge Qing silently hung up the phone. Zhuge also put down his phone and laughed heartily. Truly, the younger generation surpasses the older. Brother Jin's teleportation technique has truly broadened my horizons. He arrived in my huge village from Beijing in the blink of an eye. Inwardly, however, Zhuge felt a chill. It seems what they said was true. Jin Bao's strength is truly unfathomable. I'll have to be careful what I say later. He had initially had considerable doubts about Jin Bao's supposed strength being comparable to the old celestial master, since he hadn't witnessed it firsthand. Not only him, but various sects and families across the country also harbored some doubts, though it was mostly the younger generation stirring things up, elevating Jin Bao to the same level as the old celestial master. In reality, after seeing the World Alliance annex the Wang family, many suspected that the killing of Wang Ai and the Wang family's experts wasn't solely due to Jin Bao, but possibly also involved hidden World Alliance experts. Now, seeing Jin Bao teleport over 1,000 miles to the ancestral home at the heart of Zhuge village, completely calm and collected, he realized that Jin Bao's strength, if not comparable to the old celestial master, was definitely among the top tier. It's important to know that the Wu Hao sect is most famous for its Kamar-Taj techniques. The entire huge village, from the outside in, is covered in Kamar-Taj formations. Without his permission, even if the celestial master himself came, he couldn't just bypass those formations and appear in the ancestral hall without warning. Patriarch Zhuge, you flatter me. It's just a small trick, nothing special, nothing compared to the exquisite arts of the Wu Hao school. George smiled and cupped his hands. Everyone likes to flatter, especially these prestigious schools, who care most about their reputation. If they were to openly humiliate him, even if they wanted the heavenly talisman, they would probably have to put on a show first, which was unnecessary. Of course, to ensure a smooth transaction and prevent the other party from making exorbitant demands, a little show of force was still necessary. Having searched the souls of so many extraordinary individuals, he naturally knew that the Wu Hao school's address was in Zhuge village, Zhejiang. Originally, he could have teleported to Zhuge village, had someone inform the patriarch, and then entered the village to meet Zhuge under the guidance of a Wu Hao school disciple. However, he didn't. After teleporting to the entrance of Zhuge village, he immediately used his mental power to cover the entire village, locate Zhuge, and skillfully bypass the Wu Hao sect's formation, appearing before Zhuge. This demonstrated both his sincerity and his strength. You've come all the way to Beijing to visit me, so to show respect, I've come from Beijing to visit you first. Though my appearance was a bit too direct, Zhuge, like Zhuge Qing, was intelligent, and even more shrewd. The moment he saw George, he understood George's meaning. So, although he had many thoughts running through his mind, he appeared very enthusiastic on the surface. Presumably, Zhuge Qing has already told the family head about the details of the transaction. I wonder what the family head's decision is. After the two sat down, George directly placed a copy of the Tongshan talisman on the table, indicating that he could take it immediately if Zhuge agreed. Zhuge narrowed his eyes upon seeing this. The Tongshan Lu is indeed a very powerful Taoist technique, but my Wu Hao sect mainly focuses on Kamar-Taj and has little research on talismans. After I learn the Kamar-Taj techniques of this huge family, I guarantee I will not pass them on to anyone else in this world, including my descendants. You can obtain the Tongshan Liu as long as you don't pass it on to outsiders. Before this huge family's tea-serving servants could even arrive, George waved his hand, conjuring 2 cups of hot tea, and leisurely took a sip from one. Zhuge raised an eyebrow upon hearing this. He hadn't expected Jin Bao to guarantee not even passing it on to his descendants. This was truly unexpected. He didn't know that Wu Hao Qimen was merely a prelude for George to learn Feng Hao Qimen later, and he only mentioned this world, not other worlds. In the future, when he fully mastered it, Wu Hao Qimen would no longer be Wu Hao Qimen. It might have already merged with Feng Hao Qimen into another, even stronger Taoist technique. Therefore, George didn't care about these conditions at all. By the way, I heard that no one from your Wu Hao school has mastered the Samadhi True Fire for hundreds of years. If I can learn it, I promise to teach Zhuge Qing and help him comprehend it. This deal, we'll do it. Upon hearing George's last sentence, Zhuge no longer hesitated and slammed his hand on the table, agreeing to the deal. Chapter 516 The Art of Manifestation in Qimen Dunjia. December 27, 2024 Author, Guaqianchuan. The Tongshan Talisman is powerful, the pinnacle of talismanic arts, but the Wu Hao sect doesn't practice talismanic arts. Therefore, even if they obtained it, it would be difficult to unleash its full power in a short time, perhaps even less effective than their nearly 2,000-year-old Wu Hao Qimen. It could only enhance the family's foundation, allowing for slow development, and perhaps through hundreds of years of research, they could achieve something in talismanic arts. But the Samadhi True Fire is different. It's the most powerful Taoist technique of their Wu Hao Qimen. However, this technique is extremely difficult. For hundreds of years, no one has been able to comprehend it. Otherwise, how could the Wu Hao sect not have a place among the 10 elders? Even his once-in-a-century genius son, Zhuge Qing, who studied all the Taoist techniques of the 4 plates of Wu Hao Qimen, couldn't comprehend the Samadhi True Fire. If Jin Bao could comprehend the Samadhi True Fire and then teach Zhuge Qing, it would be even more valuable to the Wu Hao sect than obtaining the Tongshan Talisman. As for whether Jin Bao can learn it, at less than 20 years old, he was already a genius whose strength was comparable to that of the old Celestial Master, a figure unheard of throughout history. The probability of him learning it was high. It was worth the gamble. Even without the last condition, the Tongshan Talisman alone was worth the exchange. Therefore, Zhuge knew when to stop and didn't continue to haggle for more benefits. He understood that since the other party was so agreeable, they didn't want to waste too much breath, and if he were still not satisfied, he might easily make things worse. I see. Seeing how readily Zhuge agreed, George understood that the last point was the key. However, it didn't matter much to him. Once he learned the Samadhi Fire, he would directly transfer the experience into Zhuge Qing's mind, without wasting his own time. A week later, George left Zhuge village satisfied and returned to Beijing. I never expected this much. I actually gained something like this. He had thought that Wu Hao Qimen was just a more powerful 5 elements technique. The 5 elements techniques that Zhuge Qing used at the Luotian Grand Ceremony were nothing special. To be honest, he wasn't particularly concerned, as he already knew many 5 elements Taoist arts and similar spells. His main interest in learning Wu Hao Qimen was the Samadhi Fire, which could damage the soul, and it served as a foundation for learning Feng Hao Qimen later. However, when he actually started learning, he discovered it was far more interesting than he had imagined. The most surprising aspect was the Qimen manifestation technique within Wu Hao Qimen, which allowed him to enter his inner world for divination and obtain desired information. The principle was easy for him to understand. It involved connecting his spiritual world to the information cocoon of the entire world, thereby obtaining the information he wanted. He could then use this information to make calculations, thus predicting the future. Of course, there were requirements for using this technique. First, one's spiritual power had to be strong enough, otherwise, one couldn't even enter the inner world, let alone inquire about the desired information. Second, the greater the impact of what one wanted to inquire about on the world, the more difficult it was to obtain. Finally, even if one finally obtained the desired information, one couldn't tell anyone else, otherwise, it would be considered deceiving heaven and would incur the world's backlash. The severity of the backlash depends on the extent of the impact your revelation has on the world. Besides direct physical manifestations, there are more troublesome backlashes. For example, it can diminish your luck, causing misfortune, bad luck, or even a violent death at the hands of a powerful enemy. If the information is revealed vaguely using coded language, allowing others to understand on their own, the backlash will be much less severe. This is why many skilled sorcerers give ambiguous and cryptic answers after performing divination. He spent most of his time in his huge village researching this Kamar manifestation technique and experimenting with it numerous times. For him, many questions could be easily answered, and even directly telling others would result in minimal backlash. This is because his power is so immense in this world, so immense that he is the greatest influence in the world, that the impact of other information becomes negligible. For example, even if he revealed certain information and suffered the most severe violent death backlash, there would still need to be someone who could cause his violent death. Even if the strongest celestial master in the supernatural world suddenly took a dislike to him and harbored murderous intent towards him, he still couldn't kill her. To take it even further, if the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs were to crash into Earth again, causing his violent death, he could still send the asteroid flying back. Therefore, in worlds with lower power levels, he could easily divine any information he wanted using the Kamar phenomenon technique. Actually, he had also learned prophetic magic in Sakura's world, but because he hadn't encountered anything similar in other worlds, his learning was slow, and he was still basically at the beginner level. Now he had finally found a spell with the same effect, even more detailed and easier to learn. Combining the two, he believed he would soon become a top-tier fortune teller. Go check on Wang Yi's situation. The Wu-Hao Kamar technique had given him some pleasant surprises, making him even more interested in the more powerful Feng Hao Kamar manifestation technique. Directly entering his inner world, George inquired about Wang Yi's location, and quickly found the answer in his mind. This was much more efficient than using tracking spells or anything like that. Furthermore, there's no need to worry about being blocked when casting tracking spells, unless the other party is also skilled in divination or prophecy. Zhang Chulan and Feng Bao are here too. It seems they've come to Nadu Tong. After divining Wang Yi's location, George teleported there and saw Wang Yi with Zhang Chulan and the others, seemingly dealing with those monitoring him. He originally wanted to go down and find Wang Yi directly to discuss the Feng Hao Kamar matter further. Just because Wang Yi had no desire didn't mean his Wudang sect didn't. Given the right conditions, the chances of success were still high. However, the next second, he suddenly stopped. Interesting, what is this? The 72 transformations of earthly fiends. He discovered that Wang Yi was actually beaten up when dealing with a small fry. And even the time-slowing chaotic golden Tuo had no effect. Moreover, that small fry was actually someone else in disguise, able to transform into a bee, fly, or mosquito to hide, which aroused his curiosity. He had searched the souls of so many people, but he had never heard of any supernatural being possessing such a 72 transformations technique. At most, they could just change their faces and disguise themselves as others. If the target was Wang Yi's Feng Hao Kamar technique, why did they abandon him after defeating him? Also, Wang Yi's strength is second only to the 10 elders in the world of supernatural beings, yet he was defeated so easily. This imposter's strength is not as good as the old celestial master, but it surpasses most of the 10 elders. Chapter 517 Transform Me into a King. 27, 2024 Author, Guaqianchuan Kamar Manifestation. George entered the inner realm to try and identify the person, only to find himself faced with a gigantic fireball. Is the impact that significant? He stroked his chin, temporarily abandoning further divination. It wasn't that he couldn't crush the fireball, but the person was right there. He could simply interact with it and find out. There was no need to defy the world. He obtained information through divination, and the subsequent backlash wouldn't harm him, but being plagued by bad luck was still annoying. For example, being struck by lightning while walking, being hit by a car, or being inexplicably disliked and ostracized. These wouldn't hurt him, but there was no need for them. Blockhead. I've reminded you so much, and you still can't understand. Inside the building, watching Wang Yi and Zhang Chulan leave, the old man, who had reverted from a mosquito to human form, couldn't help but curse. He had just finished cursing when he heard a voice behind him, and his body immediately stiffened. A reminder, a comprehension. Could you be a Taoist priest from Wudang Mountain? But I've never heard of Wudang Mountain being proficient in transformation techniques. You actually appeared behind me silently. The old man immediately turned and retreated, but after clearly seeing the newcomer's appearance, he frowned. It's you. If there's anyone famous in the world of supernatural beings right now, it's undoubtedly this young man. He won first place in the Luotian Grand Ceremony, obtained the Tongshan Scroll, and even killed the Wang family patriarch and all the experts who tried to steal it. He had even watched the Luotian Grand Ceremony as a bird. Who I am is none of your business. The old man transformed into a sparrow and flew directly out of the building. This young man was very strong. Even he wasn't confident he could defeat him, so it was best not to provoke him. However, how could George let the old man off so easily? From the old man's appearance and age, and what he had just said, he had already made a judgment about his identity. According to Wang Ai's memory, the creators of the 8 extraordinary techniques were Zhang Huai of Longhu Mountain, Feng Xianang, a great shaman of Liangshan, Zhang Zibu of Maoshan Shenking, Zhou Xing of Wudang, Ma Benzai, a weapon refiner of Xiangongtang, Ruan Feng, a rogue cultivator, Gu Jiding, a family-trained sorcerer, and Duan Mu Ying, the eldest daughter of Jishidang. This old Taoist priest secretly instructed Zhou Yi and Feng Hao Qimen and could use transformation techniques beyond the common knowledge of normal sorcerers, so he was very likely Zhou Sheng, the creator of Feng Hao Qimen. You like transformation? Then let's spar a bit. George used the transformation technique he learned from the fairy tale world, transforming into an eagle and swooping towards the old man who had transformed into a sparrow. Upon seeing this, the old man immediately landed on the roadside and transformed into a tiger, pouncing on George's eagle. Just as the tiger was about to pounce, George transformed into a giant panda and slapped the tiger away. A panda and a tiger, a cow horse, walking home after finishing overtime work, saw a tiger and a panda facing off ahead and rubbed his eyes, thinking he was hallucinating from overtime. Once he realized it was real, he immediately turned and ran. Although he really wanted to take out his phone to film the scene of the tiger and panda fighting on the roadside, survival was paramount. If the tiger attacked him, he would be dead. What do you want? The old man, seeing that a commoner had been scared away, knew this wasn't a good place to fight, otherwise his identity would be easily exposed. So he transformed back into human form and asked George. He hadn't expected the other party to also possess transformation skills. Escaping by transformation was impossible. Seeing the old gentleman's exquisite transformation skills, I was itching to spar. I meant no harm, George replied, also returning to human form with a smile. The old man raised an eyebrow. I have other matters to attend to and do not wish to spar with you. May I ask if you are Master Zhou Sheng, the creator of Feng Hao Qimen? Seeing the old man turn to leave, George asked calmly. Zhou Sheng, his identity exposed by George, stiffened, turned to look at George, narrowed his eyes slightly, and revealed a hint of killing intent. If I were Master Zhou Sheng, what would you want? Nothing much, just want to learn about the Feng Hao Qimen created by Master Zhou. Of course, I like to trade. Master Zhou can set any conditions, and I can certainly meet them, George stated his purpose bluntly. Now that he had found Zhou Sheng, the founder of Feng Hao Qimen, he no longer needed to ask Xiao Wang to exchange for Feng Hao Qimen. He could go directly to Zhou Sheng. He had previously thought that the founders of these 8 extraordinary techniques were all dead. After all, so many years had passed. Moreover, all the extraordinary individuals he had searched believed that the 8 extraordinary techniques, or rather, the 36 sworn brothers, were all dead. Now it seems there are still survivors. Perhaps he can use a tracking spell or find time to perform divination. You want to learn my Feng Hao Qimen? Alright, no conditions required. If you want to learn, I can teach you right now. Hearing George's words, Zhou Sheng's eyes darted around, a malicious smile appearing on his face. Was the Feng Hao Qimen he created so easy to learn? The sorcerer's path was inherently extremely dangerous, and the arts of Qimen were usually accompanied by danger, especially the practice of observing inner visions to obtain information from the world. This Feng Hao Qimen allowed one to grasp the changes of all things in the world, allowing one's innate ki to govern the 72 phases of heaven and earth, transforming oneself into a king of phases. Therefore, one would come into extensive contact with the essence of the world, discovering one's own insignificance in comparison, gradually developing doubts about the world, about oneself, and about everything. Ultimately, attempting to control everything in the world, one's spirit would sink directly into the inner vision, unable to extricate oneself, becoming confused and insane. After creating the Feng Hao Qimen, he secretly returned to Wudang Mountain, intending to pass it on to his fellow disciples, making it the most powerful foundation of Wudang Mountain. As a result, several fellow disciples went mad after practicing, until Wang Yi, A young man whose talent and temperament far surpassed that of normal people, appeared and unexpectedly inherited his technique. After so many years of research, he had a thorough understanding of his technique. And he even felt that if the old celestial master were to delve deeper into his Feng Hao Qi Men, he might also go insane. Although this Jin Bao was strong enough, he was still young, and wanting both the Tong Xinlu and his Feng Hao Qi Men, he was clearly a person with strong desires. Such a person, possessing strength but lacking in temperament, was most likely to be impacted by the world after learning Feng Hao Qi Men and thus go mad. Therefore, since the other party wanted to learn, he would teach him. If he went mad, it wouldn't be his fault, and he would also avoid a future problem. How could I accept this? Well then, if you need any help in the future, just ask. George was somewhat surprised by Zhou Sheng's quick agreement, but he didn't care too much. He knew that learning Feng Hao Qi Men definitely had some unknown risks, which could be seen from Wang Yi's attitude. However, he was confident in himself, whether physically or mentally. He was not on the same level as the other extraordinary people in this world. If Zhou Sheng and Wang could learn it, then he certainly could too. Chapter 518 Leading the Changes in the Heavenly Cycle, the Embryo of a Small World. So you want Feng Hao Qi Men? Then I'll give you everything. Zhou Sheng walked up to George, a bagua formation forming in his hand, and pointed at George's brow. George didn't dodge. Even if Zhou Sheng attacked at this moment, he couldn't hurt him. The bagua formation shrank the instant Zhou Sheng's finger touched George's brow, flooding into George's spiritual world, and all the knowledge about Feng Hao Qi Men appeared in George's mind. As this knowledge flooded in, a bagua diagram naturally formed beneath George's feet, and his spirit entered his inner world, where a massive amount of information converged with his spirit. So that's how it is. At this moment, George understood why the king was unwilling to trade with him, and why Zhou Sheng unconditionally taught him Feng Hao Qi Men. This impact is powerful, but it can't defeat me. Feeling his spirit passively connecting with the world while comprehending Feng Hao Qi Men, with countless pieces of information washing over his brain, George was not surprised but delighted. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. Faced with this overwhelming influx of knowledge and laws from the entire world, most people, driven by their desires and unable to face it calmly, would quickly succumb to madness. Only those born with a Taoist seed, possessing the Taoist philosophy of non-action, like Wang Yi, could temporarily shield themselves from this onslaught of knowledge, thus learning Feng Hao Qi Men and gradually comprehending it. But there are also those like George, whose spiritual power is too strong, like a massive rock, completely unafraid of this massive influx of knowledge. Of course, if it were merely resistance, he could smoothly learn Feng Hao Qi Men once the resistance ended. But at this moment, after discovering the key points of learning Feng Hao Qi Men, a bold idea suddenly surged into George's mind. He didn't just want to resist this knowledge, he wanted to take advantage of this rare opportunity to intimately connect with the entire world and fully absorb it. As mentioned before, he was currently pursuing two paths. One was to become stronger, and the other was to create his own world. Creating his own world required comprehending the various laws of the world, acquiring a vast amount of knowledge, and would require a long time to gradually perfect. If he could fully absorb the knowledge of this world at this moment, it would be like taking a shortcut, allowing him to quickly build his own little world. However, he certainly couldn't do it with just the spirit of this clone. Then come over together, establishing another channel. George's main body and the clones from other worlds simultaneously poured their spiritual power into this clone. In an instant, his spiritual power increased eightfold. With this significant increase in spiritual power, he no longer resisted the onslaught of knowledge, but instead opened a channel to absorb it. As the knowledge poured in, he gradually understood the basic structure and various laws of this world. In the words of Feng Hao Qi Men, he was experiencing the changes of the cosmos. While comprehending, he also slowly replicated these basic structures and laws in his own space, making his created space more than just a simple space, gradually taking on the rudiments of a little world. Although it's only a rudimentary form, it saved me 1,000 years of painstaking effort. I never expected the greatest gain from learning Feng Hao Qi Men would be this. As time passed, his eightfold increase in spiritual power gradually became unsustainable, and he reluctantly ended his efforts to further refine his little world. Absorbing the knowledge of this entire world is something even he cannot do now. However, being able to construct the rudiments of a small world is already an unexpected surprise. Not good. Judging from this, he really has a chance to comprehend it. Outside, Zhou Sheng saw that after receiving the Feng Hao Qi Men, George closed his eyes and sat cross-legged, showing no signs of madness, but rather a calm expression, and he felt a sense of foreboding. After a struggle, he slowly raised his right hand. "Boy, don't blame me for being ruthless, blame yourself for being too nosy and greedy. I can't leave you as a threat." Indeed, now he was going to take advantage of the other party's lack of preparation and defense to kill him on the spot. Although doing so went against his conscience, he had to do it for his own safety and the safety of Wudang. If Jin Bao revealed that he was still alive, and that Wudang possessed the Feng Hao Qi Men and Wang Yi possessed the Feng Hao Qi Men, then his carefree days would be over, Wudang would be in great danger, and Wang Yi would also die without a burial place. Currently, everyone only suspects that Wang Yi possesses some special Taoist arts, unaware that he is using Feng Hao Qi Men. Furthermore, Feng Hao Qi Men was created by him, and he only passed it on to Wudang. How could he allow outsiders to learn it? However, just as he struck George's crown with his palm, he suddenly vanished, sucked into another location. This is impossible. Coming to his senses, sensing the changes in the surrounding space, his eyes revealed disbelief. The most important aspect of Feng Hao Qi Men is fixing the central palace, center. Wang Yi had fixed his central palace beneath his feet, then continuously expanded the coverage of his Qi Men. He wanted to envelop the enemy within his Qi Men as much as possible to unleash the power of the Qi Men magic. But this was a mistake, because you can't cover the entire world with Qi Men, your body will eventually suffer. His intervention to remind Wang Yi was to help him understand this point. Don't fix the central palace outside, but inside your body, preferably at the heart. Use your innate Qi to govern the 72 phases of heaven and earth, transforming yourself into Princess King, thus achieving a state of effortless transformation. But what did he see now? He saw the entire world transformed into someone's Qi-man, where even his own Qi-man was completely suppressed and rendered unusable. Freeze! With a soft shout in the air, Zhou Sheng felt his body bound by a powerful force. No matter how hard he exerted himself, no matter how he tried to use Feng Hao Qi-men to break through space, he couldn't move an inch. At this moment, George's figure gradually materialized before him. Zhou Sheng, what do you think I should do with you?" Stroking his chin, George looked at Zhou Sheng, whom he had frozen in his small world, a playful expression on his face. He had only condensed the rudimentary form of the small world, he was still far from establishing a complete one. However, even this rudimentary form was already extremely useful. As long as he absorbed his enemies into this small world, the power of all his spells would be greatly enhanced, because the fundamental laws of the small world were constructed by him. Even a being like the Black Dragon, capable of devouring all spells and unaffected by them, would not be completely unaffected if absorbed into the small world. This was because the Black Dragon's devouring magic would be restricted by his small world. Chapter 519, Section 24, Tongshan Valley. Normally, I would kill anyone who dared to try to kill me without hesitation. However, I'm in a very good mood today. Your Feng Hao Qi Men has brought me great benefits, so I'll spare your life. With a slight smirk, George placed his hand on Zhou Sheng's head and began searching his memories. He could spare the death penalty, but he couldn't escape the soul search. Considering that Feng Hao Qi Men had helped him establish the prototype of his small world, he could spare Zhou Sheng's life, but he no longer needed to consider morality or bottom lines. Enemies don't need morality or bottom lines. He could use Zhou Sheng's memories to see what exactly happened back then, and what Zheng Huai meant by the big thing they did. He discovered that the power system of this world wasn't high, but the various Taoist techniques were indeed very helpful to him, and he could explore them in depth. A single Feng Hao Qi Men had actually given him the opportunity to condense the prototype of his own small world. And the previous techniques like binding spirits and commanding generals, Tongshan Talisman, Exhaling Key, and Golden Light Mantra were all very useful. A moment later, George withdrew his hand, his expression quite remarkable. So that's how it is. Feng Bao is actually Wu Jinsheng's resurrected daughter, a half-immortal with this kind of power from the 8 extraordinary techniques combined. It turned out that when Wu Jinsheng's daughter, Feng Bao, died, Wu Jinsheng's personality changed drastically. He gathered 36 sworn brothers from various sects, families, and other powerful figures. Later, he and 8 others, based on the legacy left by Master Jiang, comprehended the 8 extraordinary techniques. At the cost of his own life, he used these techniques to resurrect his daughter. However, Due to the absence of Duan Mu Ying, the double-handed master, during the resurrection process, Feng Bao lost her memory after being resurrected. Even with only 7 of the 8 extraordinary techniques, Feng Bao possessed an immortal body and an inexhaustible supply of qi, making her practically a half-immortal. The 24 seasons of Tongshan Valley, the legacy left by Master Jiang, allows ordinary people to circulate qi and become extraordinary beings. That's not bad. He wasn't interested in Wu Jinsheng and Feng Bao's background, nor did he care about the resurrection itself. Resurrection was a heaven-defying feat in this world, and he had more than one method for it. What truly interested him was the 24 Heavenly Valley, capable of transforming ordinary people into extraordinary beings, and the legacy of Master Jiang. Transforming an ordinary person into an extraordinary being was no simple matter. In the Harry Potter world, wizards were born that way. Without wizarding blood, one could not use magic. In the world of magic apprentices, meditation techniques to enhance magical power required magical aptitude to learn, otherwise, they were useless. Most other worlds were similar, generally requiring innate aptitude to acquire abilities through various methods. But this 24 Heavenly Valley, simply by walking through it once, granted the method of circulating qi, granting cultivation aptitude. Even a monkey, after completing one walk, could awaken intelligence, gradually transforming qi into spirit, akin to divine enlightenment. As for Master Jiang's legacy, it goes without saying that 8 people could comprehend 8 extraordinary techniques through this legacy, which, when combined, could create a demigod. This alone speaks volumes about its value. Let's go take a look. George tossed the still shaken Zhou Sheng out of the small world, too lazy to waste words. He instantly vanished, appearing in the Kindling Mountains where the 24 Heavenly Valley was located. By the true martial emperor, what the hell is this monster? Is it on par with Master Jiang? If so, why would it bother coveting my Feng Hao Qi men? Seeing George leave and having escaped death, Zhou Sheng couldn't help but wipe the sweat from his brow. He had never seen such a powerful being before. He was certain that even the old celestial master was no match for this golden baby. Such strength was probably only comparable to someone like Master Jiang, who was just one step away from immortality. But if someone was that strong, why would they even bother with his Feng Hao Qi men? Forget it, who cares? Since such a being has let me go, it shouldn't target me anymore. I'll just avoid provoking it in the future. Knowing George's true strength, he didn't think George would be so bored as to reveal his secrets. He transformed into a small bird and quickly left. Meanwhile, atop the Kindling Mountains, George, following Zhou Sheng's memories, had found the 24 sections of the Heavenly Valley. Indeed, it looks somewhat like a human spine. The 24 sections of the Heavenly Valley, created by the Purple Sun Immortal, resembled a human spine when viewed from above. Once inside, one's body would subconsciously circulate qi according to the patterns on the valley. Completing one traverse of the valley, circulating qi once, granted one the aptitude for cultivation, truly miraculous. However, just as he was about to descend and study it more closely, he discovered that his body was blocked by a stream of qi, which was interfering with a qi within him. This must be a man-made qi formation, but this level is no challenge for me. George's body was covered by the golden light mantra, and with a tear of his hands, he actually managed to create a gap in the qi formation and squeeze inside. A qi formation, in simpler terms, is feng shui. Some are naturally formed, while others are man-made. In terms of effect, it can be seen as a formation that combines attack, defense, and special effects. If one doesn't enter according to this specific route, they will be attacked by various forms of qi surrounding the qi formation. At best, they will suffer severe injuries from the impact. At worst, their fate will be affected by the qi formation, and they won't even know how they died. It's somewhat like being subjected to a backlash from the world while performing divination within an inner realm. Wu Jinsheng was able to discover and enter because of his innate ability to neutralize any qi, rendering the qi formation of the 24 sections of Heavenly Passage Valley ineffective. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to enter. Later, he slowly explored and discovered the correct entry path before leading his 36 sworn brothers in. George learned the correct entry route from Zhou Sheng. He simply wanted to test the effects of the qi formation. It proved that the qi formation was indeed very powerful, but it also had its limits. With sufficient strength, one could force their way in. Restore to its original state. After landing and entering the 24 sections of Heavenly Passage Valley, George raised his hand and cast a restoration spell covering the entire valley. Wu Jinshen, after discovering the 24 sections of Heavenly Passage Valley and comprehending the 8 extraordinary techniques, had made certain modifications to the entire valley. He modified the patterns within the valley, so that ordinary people entering the valley and traversing the 24 Heavenly Valley would not only fail to become extraordinary beings, but would also die due to problems with their ki circulation. He also erased the legacy left by Master Jiang, preventing anyone from comprehending any new Taoist techniques through it. Since he needed to study the 24 Heavenly Valley, he naturally needed to restore these patterns. Fortunately, he possessed the heaven-defying restoration spell, which allowed him to forcibly repair the patterns and recreate the erased legacy. Having accomplished all this, George dispersed the monkeys in the valley and began his research on the entire 24 Heavenly Valley. This research lasted for over a week. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 520 Biao Village. December 30th, 2024. Author, Guaqianchuan. Those cultivators who can reach the immortal threshold are indeed quite something, George couldn't help but exclaim upon leaving the 24 Heavenly Valley. In just 1 week, he felt he had gained a great deal. Originally, he had only just begun to learn the various Taoist techniques from this world. Relying on the similar principles of magic from other worlds, he learned relatively quickly, and his own solid foundation meant that even as a beginner, his skills surpassed those of people in this world who had studied for decades. However, his research into each Taoist technique was not in depth, remaining superficial. But after this week of studying the Taoist inheritance of Master Jiang, his progress in learning the Taoist techniques of this world had increased exponentially, and he had gained many new insights. With Master Jiang's inheritance, once he obtained the borrowing Taoist technique of Shen Chong, one of the 4 madmen, he wouldn't be unable to improve it. After improving the borrowing magic, he could try to incorporate it into his cultivation in various worlds through borrowing, rapidly increasing his own strength. No wonder the heroes of various sects were able to comprehend the 8 extraordinary techniques from this. It's such a waste to leave it here. I'll store it in my little world and study it slowly later. He slapped the ground, activating the mountain moving spell. The entire 24 sections of Heavenly Valley rose from the ground and was absorbed into George's little world. After storing it, he instantly teleported away and returned to Beijing. Not long after he left, a short-haired, pink-haired woman led a group of extraordinary people to the Kindling Mountains. When they finally found the location of the 24 sections of Heavenly Valley, after trekking through mountains and rivers, they were all stunned. How could this be? What was in front of them was not the 24 sections of Heavenly Valley at all, but a giant pit. They had finally captured Mei Jinfen and figured out the location of the 24 sections of Heavenly Valley, but it had mysteriously disappeared. Mei Jinfeng comes here once a year. It's only been a few months since her last visit. What kind of force could move the entire valley? The short-haired, pink-haired woman was named Chu Tong, the president of the Yaoxing Society. At this moment, she still thought that some force had discovered the 24 Heavenly Valley first and then used a large amount of manpower and resources to dig away the entire valley. She couldn't imagine that one person could do such a thing. Go investigate. With her brows tightly furrowed, still unable to figure out which force was responsible, she could only wave her hand and have her subordinates investigate the vicinity first. Even she couldn't move the entire valley unless it was all-knowing Tong involved. But if it was all-knowing Tong involved, she couldn't have been completely unaware. She had people inside. Boss, this seems to have been dug away less than a day ago, and it was all dug away at once. There are no traces of machine digging, and no traces left by anyone else nearby. After some investigation, the supernatural beings replied somewhat hesitantly. The entire investigation results felt very strange and unbelievable even to them. Are you kidding me? Chu Tong's eyes widened. You mean someone used some kind of magic to move the entire valley at once? At the moment, that seems to be the only possibility, the supernatural beings replied with a forced smile. They couldn't believe it either, but that was the result of the examination. Chu Tong couldn't help but twitch her lips. You think this is like the foolish old man moving mountains, with yellow turban warriors descending to help move it? Can't you see how big this valley is? One person relying on magic, do you think he's a god? In Beijing, After quietly erasing all of Jin Yuan and her parents' memories of Jin Bao Bao and strengthening their bodies, George left again. In his current situation, he no longer needed the identity of Jin Bao Bao. Continuing with this identity and getting entangled in dealing with the family relationships of this body would only waste his time. He should spend more time quickly collecting all the Taoist techniques that were useful to him. After collecting them, he would find a place in the 24 Heavenly Valley of the small world to integrate and optimize various Taoist techniques with the assistance of the inheritance of the Purple Sun Immortal. Therefore, his second target now was Zhang Chulin's key source flow. He already had a bargaining chip that would make Zhang Chulin willingly hand over the key source flow, which was Feng Bao Bao's background. Gizhao, Liupanshu, above Baiyao village. How did he end up in such a remote place? Did he take on another mission? He had just divined Zhang Chulin's location and found that the guy wasn't in Beijing or Tianjin, but had actually gone to Liupanshu, Gizhao. He had no choice but to use phantom teleportation. According to the information he had obtained from Soul's search about Nadutong, Nadutong was divided into 8 parts. The highest leadership body was the Board of Directors, which had 7 major regions: East China, South China, North China, Central China, Northeast, Northwest, and Southwest. Zhang Chulin had joined the North China region, which mainly managed Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei, Shaanxi, and Central Inner Mongolia, and was headed by Su Si. Gizhao belonged to the Southwest region, which was clearly not within Zhang Chulin's work area. This place is strange. There are so many extraordinary people, and quite a few of them are quite strong. Wang Yi and Zhuge Qing are here too. I haven't heard of any famous Xer families around here. A strange expression appeared on George's face as he scanned the area with his spiritual power. But none of them were in Liupanshu, Gizhao. After thinking for a moment, he didn't pay much attention to it and landed directly in the village. Experts are only relevant to ordinary superhumans. To him, they're all weaklings, just varying degrees of weakness. Clang. 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 After landing, he immediately knocked on the wooden door of a house. According to his senses, Zhang Chulin was inside, along with Feng Bao Bao and several other capable individuals. Who is it? The moment the knock was made, a wary voice rang out, and the door was pushed open. Brother Jin. Seeing George standing at the door, Zhang Chulin's face showed surprise. How could he not be surprised? Just a few days ago in Beijing, he had helped Wang Yi resolve some trouble, and then he received the mission to capture Chen Duo, a temporary worker from the South China region. The reason was that Chen Duo had killed Liao Zhang, the head of the South China region. This mission was related to the elimination of temporary workers, so he had to bring Feng Bao Bao to carry out the mission, along with temporary workers from other regions. During their pursuit of Chen Duo, they discovered that Chen Duo had joined a force called Baiyao village. Therefore, capturing Chen Duo was secondary. The mission changed to eradicating Baiyao village, capturing Ma Xianhong, recruiting the village's supernatural beings into the company, and dispersing the ordinary people waiting for conversion. Just as he and the other temporary workers from the various districts were discussing tomorrow's battle plan, there was a knock on the door. Chapter 521 Comprehending the Source Flow of Qi. December 30th, 2024. Author, Guaqianchuan. Someone approached at such close range, yet none of them noticed. If the people of Baiyao village discovered their plan, it would be troublesome. That's why he was so vigilant. Who knew that when he opened the door, it was Jin Bao Bao? Wasn't Jin Bao Bao in Beijing? How did she suddenly come to Baiyao village? And how could the large company forces already deployed nearby not have been notified at all? Zhang Chulin was filled with questions. Zhang Chulin, I came here specifically to see you, George replied. Zhang Chulin's mind raced. Recalling what Wang Yi and Zhuge Qing had said before, he immediately chuckled and said, Brother Jin, I've already told you. I really didn't. Everyone knows that. I already know the secret about Feng Bao Bao's background. I can use that as a bargaining chip. What do you think? George smiled calmly, and Zhang Chulin's pupils shrank instantly. He turned to Feng Bao Bao, who was still stuffing Molotov cocktails, and said, Sister Bao Bao, stop for now, come out with me. Then he said to the others, Brother Zio, the plan is the plan. You guys discuss it again. I have something to take care of first. Zhang Chulin pulled Feng Bao Bao and George towards the grove of trees in the distance. Brother Jin, let's find a quiet place to talk. Why is Jin Bao Bao here? Should we report this to the company? Wang Zhenqiu, a temporary worker from the southwest region, looked at the departing George and his companions with interest. Lao Meng, a temporary worker from the northwest region, hesitated, while He Guaner, a temporary worker from the central China region, remained expressionless. Finally, Xiao Zizhe, a temporary worker from the East China region, replied, "Have Zhuang informed the company. Advise you not to provoke this Jin Bao Bao. He's not someone we can afford to mess with. Even the company hasn't figured out how to contact him yet." He emphasized this when he looked at Wang Zhenqiu. Among these temporary workers, besides Zhang Chulin, he was the one who knew the other party's strength best. Zhangzi's Longhu Mountain belongs to the East China region. When the Guangxing sect besieged Longhu Mountain, he had gone there as an auxiliary force. Later, when the Wang family attacked Jin Bao Bao to seize the Tongshan talisman, he followed Dao Li, the East China head, and witnessed firsthand how Jin Bao Bao annihilated the Wang family. The flames created a terrifying crater. He still found it unbelievable. Through these past few days of interaction, he knew Wang Zhenqiu was a very curious person, and he feared that if Wang Zhenqiu angered Jin Bao Bao, he would suffer the consequences. Given Jin Bao Bao's demonstrated strength, all the temporary workers combined probably couldn't withstand a single blow. In the company's danger rating system, Jin Bao Bao was even more dangerous than the old Celestial Master. The old Celestial Master was indeed powerful, but he hadn't been seen killing anyone in all these years. Jin Bao Bao, on the other hand, could wipe out an entire family with a single move. "Brother Xiao, do you think I'm that reckless?" Wang Zhenqiu tossed his golden hair and winked at Xiao Zizhe. He wasn't stupid. Although he didn't know Jin Bao Bao as well as Xiao Zizhe did, he was still well informed and knew that Jin Bao Bao's strength was not to be trifled with. Having learned the Taoist arts of so many sects, he hadn't been hunted down by a united group of people. He had his own way of surviving and knew how to avoid danger and seek good fortune. In a nearby grove, after surveying his surroundings, Zhang Chulin bowed and asked George with a fawning expression, Brother Jin, how did you come to know about Sister Baoer's background?" "Little Zhang, you know my strength. I'm certain you possess the key body source flow technique, so you definitely do. I also have the means to directly extract the key body source flow technique from your mind. However, I don't like to take things by force, I prefer a transaction." George paused, then continued, "I recently found Zhou Sheng, the creator of the 8 extraordinary techniques, the Feng Hao Key Men, and learned about Feng Baoer's background from him. If you're willing to give me the key body source flow technique, I can exchange it for that. And I can guarantee I won't tell anyone you know the key body source flow technique, and I'll keep these secrets." "Brother Jin, you see, I naturally believe you. I'm not lying to you, I really don't know the key body source flow technique," Zhang Chulin said sincerely. "However, I do possess the key source flow, it resides within my body. My grandfather had Baoer pass it down to me. If you have a way to obtain the cultivation technique within, I would be very willing to give it to you. In truth, if he could guarantee his own safety and help Baoer discover her origins, he wouldn't mind sharing the key source flow with everyone in the world." He wasn't clinging to outdated ideas, he simply wanted to live a good life with Baoer. Therefore, after witnessing Jin Bao Bao's power in destroying the Wang family and learning that Jin Bao Bao hadn't forcibly taken Wang Yi's Feng Hao Key Men technique, he believed Jin Bao Bao's words. After all, if Jin Bao Bao wanted to forcibly take his key source flow, he would have had no power to resist, even the company couldn't stand up for him. His master, the old Celestial Master, had personally admitted that he was no match for Jin Bao Bao. Therefore, what reason did he have to refuse this deal at this moment? If he could establish a good relationship with Jin Bao Bao through this, perhaps he could ask Jin Bao Bao for help in the future if he and Feng Bao Bao were in danger. "Don't worry about that. As long as you agree, I have my own way of obtaining the key source flow technique from your body." George waved his hand, and seeing that Zhang Chulin agreed, he told him all the secrets about the 36 Thieves' Oath of Brotherhood, the 8 extraordinary techniques, and Feng Bao Bao's background. "By the way, these are Wu Jinshin's things, and there's a painting of Feng Bao Bao in them." George waved his hand, and a pile of miscellaneous items appeared on the ground. These were all personal belongings left by Wu Jinshin in the 24 Heavenly Valley, nothing useful, just odds and ends. Feng Bao Bao picked up the painting on the ground, looked at the woman in it who looked exactly like herself, and murmured, "So I really do have family. So my father is Wu Jinshin, And his name is Feng Yao? No wonder my grandfather refused to return to Longhu Mountain. Everything makes sense now. After hearing George's words, Zhang Qiulin stood there, his heart unable to calm down for a long time. At this moment, George reached out and placed his hand on Zhang Qiulin's head, his spiritual power penetrating his body to begin obtaining the key source flow technique from within him. Previously, he might not have been able to do this. Even Zhang Qiulin didn't know what the key body source flow was. He had only just begun studying the Taoist arts of this world. How could he possibly recreate the cultivation method directly based on the circulation of qi within the body? But now it's different. He has received the inheritance of Master Jiang and also possesses the Longhu Mountain cultivation method. As long as he observes the circulation of the qi body source flow, recreating the cultivation method is not difficult. Zhang Huai, for example, comprehended the qi body source flow based on the Longhu Mountain cultivation method and through the inheritance of Master Jiang. Chapter 522 Masts and Forts Reduced to Ashes. 2024-12-30 Author, Guaqianchuan Dun. About 10 minutes later, George slowly withdrew his hand. I didn't expect this to be the key body source flow. No wonder Zhang Huai said his understanding had surpassed Wu Jinxiang's, knowing the Longhu Mountain techniques, having the inheritance of Master Jiang, and having directly observed the key body source flow's key circulation. He quickly and as expected, successfully reconstructed the entire key body source flow technique and understood its true function. The power of the Tongshan talisman lies in its ability to use qi directly to perform any talisman technique without the need for any tools, and its power is even greater than using tools. The more proficient one is in talisman techniques, the more power the Tongshan talisman can unleash. The spirit binding technique can forcibly bind all spirits in the world, whether they are demon spirits that have cultivated for thousands of years or the souls of the dead. It can also permanently increase one's cultivation level by consuming spirits. However, none of these can compare to the key body source flow, which is the pinnacle of techniques. It not only possesses abilities similar to a divine spirit, capable of forcibly dispelling any spell, but also relies solely on the physical body cultivated through life and death for combat. Furthermore, it boasts multiple abilities such as amplifying the user's physical body, detoxification, and defense. In fact, careful observation reveals that the key body source flow is like a fusion, an upgraded version of the divine spirit and the golden light mantra. However, using this key body source flow also has a drawback. It consumes a significant amount of qi. If the qi within the body is not abundant enough, then when the qi is exhausted, the key body source flow will naturally dissipate. He wasn't worried about this at all. Qi, magic power, and mana are all the same thing, energy within the body, and he happened to have an abundance of these, so there was no possibility of depletion. While examining Zhang Qiulin's cultivation technique, he also glanced at Zhang Qiulin's memories. Back then, Zhang Huai stormed into the Tang sect and was poisoned by their strongest qi poison, Dan Shi, but he survived unscathed. In the ensuing battle, he even killed over a dozen veteran masters of the supernatural world. Ultimately, he succumbed to Dan Shi's poison when his internal qi was exhausted and he could no longer maintain his qi source flow. If Zhang Huai had had enough qi back then, he probably wouldn't have needed to hide his entire life. Any spell composed of energy would be useless against him, and he would have the added benefit of his qi source flow. Crucially, he could also use magic. How could anyone fight him? It's like the most powerful black dragon in the fairy tale world, feared even by Zareth, the dark mage who created countless demons. No magic is effective against the black dragon. The only way to defeat it is through hand-to-hand combat, and how can a human possibly compete with a dragon's physical strength? Crucially, you still have to endure the black dragon's roar. It's practically cheating. Fortunately, once he achieves his qi source flow, he can do the same. When he fights the black dragon, his magic will be ineffective against it, and the black dragon's magic will be ineffective against him. He also has various methods to enhance his physical body and can even pull the black dragon into his small world. All things considered, his chances of winning are very high. That's all. Zhang Qiulin blinked. The other person had only touched his hut for a short while, and he hadn't felt anything. This was different from what he had imagined. Normally, I would know just by touching it. You wasted some time because you didn't even know the technique yourself, and I had to deduce it myself, George explained. Upon hearing this, Zhang Qiulin gasped, "Brother Jin, you're too amazing. You can get someone's technique just by touching their head? With your strength, you can get anyone's technique just by wanting it? This is too abnormal, too enviable. George chuckled. I don't just touch someone's head to get their information, I touch their head to get their memories. Oh no, actually, looking into their eyes works too. But out of basic morality, I usually only do it with their consent. So you just looked at mine too? Zhang Chulin was initially shocked, then, as if remembering something, asked cautiously. Yes, I did. To deduce the key source flow technique, I definitely need your memories as a reference. George patted Zhang Chulin's shoulder. Friendly reminder, although you're an outcast, you've cultivated since childhood and have a great body, but you still need to do it in moderation. Remember, all ships and forts will be reduced to ashes. What ships and forts? At this moment, Feng Bao, with innocent eyes, leaned closer. She had recovered from her past and returned to her usual self. She had always wanted to find her family, but not on the way of ordinary people. After all, she had lived for so many years. The death of her family was something she had long anticipated, she just wanted an answer. Now that she had the answer, she naturally returned to normal. Sister Bayor, refers to abode and ours, is a line from a famous poem by the great poet Su Shi. You can look it up on your phone. Zhang Chulin hurriedly dismissed Feng Bayor, then awkwardly said to George, Brother Jin, I understand, you're young and impetuous, and single. What are you planning to do in the future? George nodded. Zhang Chulin was still a virgin because he had concealed his identity as an alien and the restriction on his manhood, which was normal. He was just joking. Zhang Chulin scratched his head. What can I do? Continue with the current situation. That way, Sister Bayor and I are safer. Although he knew the whole truth, he didn't plan to take Sister Bayor away from Nadu Tong. It's good to have a powerful backer. Nadu Tong was a very strong backer, and with Su San and Su Si helping, they could handle many complicated situations and continue to protect Sister Bayor. On the contrary, if he took Sister Bayor away from the company, once her secret of immortality was exposed, they would have no one to rely on. Even Longhu Mountain couldn't protect them. The Celestial Master could at most protect him. He wouldn't risk antagonizing the entire supernatural world for Bayor's sake, disrupting its balance. Going abroad would be even worse. The supernatural world overseas was far more chaotic and complex than in China. Therefore, maintaining the status quo was best for him. Zhang Chulin, let me teach you a lesson. Relying on yourself is worse than relying on others. Your key body source flow is a top-tier cultivation technique with limitless potential. Cultivating it diligently is the key. When you reach the Celestial Master's level, even if Feng Bao's secret of immortality is exposed, no one will dare touch you. In a good mood after obtaining the key body source flow, George offered this friendly advice. In his view, cultivating diligently and strengthening one's own power was paramount. The Celestial Master was bound by his concern for the supernatural world and Longhu Mountain. With Zhang Chulin's cunning nature, if he possessed the Celestial Master's strength, no one would dare provoke him. Brother Jin, you don't really care about immortality. Zhang Chulin nodded first, then, as if remembering something, his eyes flickered, and he tentatively probed. George turned and waved his hand. Not interested, because I am already immortal. Perhaps we'll meet again someday. With that, he vanished from the spot. Chapter 523 Finding Memories is my specialty. December 30th, 2024 Author, Guaqianchuan. After obtaining the key source flow from Zhang Chulin, George did not leave the village but teleported to the largest house at the back of the village. After reading Zhang Chulin's memories, he also learned about Zhang Chulin's purpose in coming to Baiao village, as well as the Nuji sect and its leader, Ma Xianhong. He wasn't interested in the cultivation furnace that could transform ordinary people into superhumans. He had the inheritance of the Purple Sun True Man, and his method of transforming ordinary people into superhumans was far superior to that cultivation furnace. Walking through the 24 Heavenly Valley once was enough for even a monkey to obtain ki and transform into a spirit, without any risk or difficulty. The cultivation furnace, on the other hand, not only required powerful superhumans as assistants but also wasn't guaranteed to succeed every time. The process was also quite painful and required considerable willpower. Even if it were perfected, it would still be far inferior to the 24 Heavenly Valley. However, he was interested in Ma Xianhong's technique because it was one of the 8 extraordinary techniques, the divine refinement of the 100 machines, representing the pinnacle of mechanical arts, weapon crafting, object manipulation, an object transformation in this world. He stepped forward and pushed open the door, revealing a massive golden furnace before him. Beside the furnace stood a long-haired man, hammering and tapping at it. Upon seeing the door open, the man's face immediately showed impatience. "Didn't I tell you not to bother me for the next few days? Who are you?" He quickly realized that the person who entered wasn't one of his village's men, but a young, unfamiliar man. He then cautiously jumped down from the furnace. All the routes into and out of Biao village were guarded by the villagers. Outsiders couldn't enter without his permission, let alone approach the house where he refined his cultivation furnace. "Ma Xianhong, I heard you're Ma Benzai's grandson, possessing the Divine 100 Refinements. I want your Divine 100 Refinements," George spoke bluntly, stating his purpose directly. Upon hearing this, Ma Xianhong raised an eyebrow. "Want my Divine Mechanism 100 Refinements? Let's see if you have the ability." His philosophy was to teach without discrimination, so he didn't mind passing on the Divine Mechanism 100 Refinements to outsiders, but he didn't give it to just anyone. The 12 villagers with the 12 root talents could learn his Divine Mechanism 100 Refinements if they wanted, but no one was interested except for Chu Rang, who had the talent. So he passed it on to Chu Rang. There was also the outsider's huge Qing, whom he thought was a good person and was willing to use Kimandunjia to help him complete his body refinement furnace, so he also passed on the Divine Mechanism 100 Refinements to him. But this outsider who suddenly appeared and trespassed into the village, wanting his Divine Mechanism 100 Refinements, how could he possibly give it to him? He needed to capture the outsider first and then find out which force had sent him. As the key within Ma Xianhong's body connected with the house, countless lifelike puppets descended from the sky, surrounding and attacking George. These were all puppets created by Ma Xianhong using the Divine Mechanism 100 Refinements, each possessing considerable strength even in the world of supernatural beings. Among them was a special black puppet with exceptionally high energy, comparable to the leader of a minor sect. However, George merely raised his hand, and countless bolts of lightning flashed, instantly turning all the puppets and the black puppet into a pile of fragments. "My name is Jin Bao Bao. You should have heard of me. I'm not a robber. I've come to ask you for the Divine 100 Refinements to make a deal with you." The moment all the puppets shattered, George had already vanished before Ma Xianhong's eyes, and then he heard George's voice in his ear. At that moment, cold sweat broke out on his back. Instantly killing so many puppets and appearing behind him before he could even react, killing him would be incredibly easy. He had many magical treasures, but the other party didn't even give him time to use them before easily defeating him. Then, he remembered the name Jin Bao Bao. His subordinates had mentioned it to him during their investigation. "Are you Jin Bao Bao, the one who won first place in the Luotian Grand Ceremony and even killed all the experts of the Wang family?" "That's me. I have no ill intentions, I just want to make a deal with you." George strolled forward, waved his hand, and used a repair spell to fix all the puppets. Then he turned and gave Ma Xianhong a friendly smile. The other party didn't recognize him, so he needed to let him understand his strength first, otherwise, it would be difficult to reach a deal later. "What do you want me to trade?" Ma Xianhong's expression was somewhat solemn. Facing a powerful figure who could kill him at any moment, no one would feel relaxed. George glanced at the body refinement furnace and asked, "Do you know why Nadu Tong sent so many temporary workers to the village?" "Of course I know. They're here to capture Chen Duo, but since Chen Duo is from my Biao village, I must protect her, no matter who comes." Ma Xianhong's tone was firm. "He's quite a man of character." George nodded with some appreciation. Although Ma Xianhong was somewhat stubborn and self-righteous, he wasn't a bad person and was exceptionally simple-minded. According to Zhang Chulin's judgment, Ma Xianhong truly regarded all the inheritors of the 8 extraordinary techniques as family. Moreover, he firmly believed in justice and was willing to fight against any force to protect his companions. To tell you the truth, their purpose in coming to the village isn't Chen Duo at all. Chen Duo is secondary, they can just send 2 temporary workers at most. Now, besides the few in the village's perimeter has been sealed off by a large number of superhumans from the all-knowing alliance, who have also mobilized troops and many powerful weapons. Seeing Ma Xianhong's expression change drastically, George continued, "Their target is actually you. Your creation of this body cultivation furnace can transform ordinary people into superhumans. When the number of superhumans increases dramatically, conflicts will arise with ordinary people. Moreover, normal superhumans are cultivated from childhood, not only in body but also in mind, gradually gaining power and developing a sense of awe for it. But the superhumans you create with a body cultivation furnace suddenly gain power, possessing only power but no heart, inevitably leading to chaos. This will cause immense chaos. And many innocent people will die because of it, something they absolutely cannot allow. My condition is that I can safely send you away from the village, saving your life, in exchange for my divine refinement 100 techniques. How could this happen? But I must perfect the body refinement furnace. I need to regain my lost memories, to find my lost family. I can't leave alone. Hearing George's words, Ma Xianhong sat down on the ground, somewhat bewildered. First, the company had mobilized such a large force to besiege Baiao's village. No matter how they resisted, they couldn't win. Second, he hadn't really considered all that. He believed everyone should have the right to become an outcast, but he hadn't expected that the outcasts created in this way would go out of control, and the problems that followed. Finally, even so, he had a reason to perfect the body refinement furnace. Regain your lost memories? George was taken aback. Regaining memories is my specialty. How about we switch conditions? I'll help you regain your memories, and you give me the divine refinement 100 techniques. Chapter 524 A Good Show. 31, 2024 Author, Guaqianchuan. Can you help me regain my memories? Ma Xianhong looked up immediately upon hearing George's words, his face full of excitement. If you can help me regain my lost memories, I'll give you anything you want. He had loved mechanical arts since childhood, and later, his great-grandfather taught him the divine mechanical refinement, which he quickly mastered, earning him praise as a genius surpassing himself. When he was 15, his great-grandfather suddenly had his leg cut off and was hospitalized. His great-grandfather told him about the 8 extraordinary techniques and prepared to escape with his family. However, his memories ended when his family left the hospital and got into the car. There was nothing left. When he regained his memories, he was all alone. Fortunately, he met a kind-hearted older sister, Chu Tong, who took him in, treated him like a younger brother, and helped him search for his family. Chu Tong was a person with lofty ideals, hoping that everyone in the world could become an extraordinary being, that there would be no more differences, no more struggles, and no more bloodshed for inheritance. Therefore, he founded the Yaoxing Society to help those in need, to help them resolve their inner conflicts, and to give them a new lease on life. His purpose in creating the perfect body refinement furnace was twofold. Firstly, to repay his sister for her care and help her achieve her ideals and establish her dream kingdom, and more importantly, to use the furnace to repair his lost memories and find his grandfather and family. If the other party could help him regain his memories, he would give them everything, not just the divine refinement furnace, but all the magical artifacts he had created. I don't need anything else from you, the divine refinement furnace will suffice. George reached out and pressed down on Ma Xianhong's head, his powerful mental energy invading Ma Xianhong's mental world, rapidly reading all his memories. Interesting, a memory is sealed, but that won't stump me. Through his research, he understood that memories are imprinted on the soul, even considered a component of the soul. Therefore, there is no such thing as completely erasing memories. Even in reincarnation, there is a chance to awaken memories of the previous life. Normally, the so-called erasure of memories is actually just sealing them deeper within the soul. As long as you delve deeper and gain a better understanding of this, you can break the seal again and restore the memories. Ma Xianhong's memory was sealed very deeply, but it was nothing to George. Release. George directly shattered the mental energy sealing the memory, releasing it once more. What a well-directed and acted show! After reading Ma Xianhong's sealed memory, he couldn't help but sigh. When he first looked at Ma Xianhong's memory, he felt that Chu Tong was a bit strange. Chu Tong claimed to be the successor of the 8 extraordinary techniques, the dual-handed technique, and because they were both successors of the 8 extraordinary techniques, she came specifically to save Ma Xianhong's family. But George immediately felt it was fake because it was too coincidental. The Ma family had been hidden for so many years without being discovered, and then you came as soon as they were discovered, and all the Ma family members were captured except for the most talented Ma Xianhong. Normally, if you were going to capture someone, you would capture them all, or kill them all. There's no reason to leave Ma Xianhong alone, and then have him found by you. It's only because Ma Xianhong is relatively naive and young, and has been constantly brainwashed by Chu Tong, that he didn't notice anything amiss. If Ma Xianhong had Zhang Qiulin's intelligence, he probably would have seen through it long ago. Finally, Chu Tong's ideals are too grandiose to overthrow the existing order, establish a new one, and turn all humans into inhumans. In his view, anyone with such ideals is not normal. Their thoughts and methods are extremely extreme. Like Magneto, who wanted to turn all humans into mutants, Magneto was willing to kill even Mystique, his most loyal follower, for his ideals. In his opinion, Chu Tong's ideals are a joke. Not only is turning all ordinary people into inhumans impossible, but even if it were possible, it wouldn't eliminate class divisions and conflicts. The tragedies would still occur, perhaps even more so. What's the difference between a world where everyone is an inhuman and a world where everyone is ordinary? Unless everyone becomes a saint, as long as there's profit, there will inevitably be conflict, and the weak and kind will always suffer. It's just that they've gone from ordinary people to inhumans. In Ma Xianhong's sealed memories, George saw Chu Tong leading a group to stop the Ma family members who had just been discharged from the hospital. She then used her double-handed technique to erase the Ma family's memories of the 8 extraordinary techniques and Ma Xianhong, and separately erased Ma Xianhong's memories. Her purpose was simple. She valued Ma Xianhong's talent, which surpassed Ma Benzai's, and used his determination to find his family to create a perfect cultivation furnace that could transform ordinary people into superhumans. George felt that perhaps the ideal of turning all ordinary people into superhumans wasn't even real. It might be a way to acquire a large number of followers to deal with the all-knowing sect and the various sects. Otherwise, with the power of the Yaoxing Society alone, they couldn't possibly be a match for the company and the various sects. Sister, it was you. It was you. Why was it you? Why, after regaining his lost memories, Ma Xianhong almost collapsed. His sister, whom he loved and trusted so much, had actually done this to him, had deceived him for so many years. It was all a lie. Alright, the transaction is over, I should be going now. George ignored the agonizing Ma Xianhong and instantly vanished. Ma Xianhong's family affairs were none of his concern. It was a fair trade. He had already obtained the divine refinement technique and naturally needed to leave to find other valuable cultivation methods. His next target was Chu Tong. Originally, he planned to go to the Lu family to find the dual hand technique, since the blue hand technique used by Lu Liang came from the Lu family's inheritance. But after reading Ma Xianhong's memories, he felt it was more appropriate to go to Chu Tong. It was uncertain whether the Lu family had the red hand technique, and even if they did, it was clearly not as comprehensive as Chu Tong's, the daughter of Duan Mu Ying, the creator of the dual hand technique. So going directly to Chu Tong was obviously more suitable. Not long after George left, a group of villagers from Biao village and Zhangchulan and others were attracted by Ma Xianhong's painful howls. Master, what's wrong? Qiu Rang saw Ma Xianhong's collapsed expression and quickly stepped forward to ask with concern. Zhangchulan's eyes darted around, and he also went over. After a long while, Ma Xianhong finally raised his head and looked at Zhangchulan, slowly saying, Zhangchulan, I'm willing to lead all the villagers to give up resistance and obey the company's arrangements. But you must promise me 2 things, nephew. You've finally come to your senses. Zhangchulan was taken aback, then nodded with a face full of joy. But in his heart, he wondered, could it be related to him? Chapter 525 You've been exposed. December 31st, 2024 Author, Guaqianchu and Ma Xianhong previously harbored considerable resentment towards the company, and every time he tried to persuade them, Ma Xianhong resolutely refused. It was only because they were both inheritors of the 8 extraordinary techniques that Ma Xianhong's attitude towards him improved. Now, his sudden compromise was impossible without a reason. The only explanation he could think of was that the unfathomably powerful Jin Bao had contacted Ma Xianhong. Jin Bao was collecting various schools of martial arts techniques, and since he had come to Biao village, there was no reason for him not to contact Ma Xianhong. Nephew, just tell me your conditions. Zhang Julin patted Ma Xianhong's shoulder and winked at Wang Zhenqiu behind him. Wang Zhenqiu immediately contacted Erzhuang, asking him to contact the higher-ups. Ma Xianhong and the 12 superior roots were quite powerful, and the company was unwilling to resort to force unless absolutely necessary. Moreover, talent like Ma Xianhong was exactly what the company needed. He was capable of mass-producing magical artifacts. With a number of extraordinary individuals in the company, plus the help of magical artifacts, many things would be much simpler to handle. If Ma Xianhong is willing to voluntarily join the company, then as long as the conditions aren't too unreasonable, the company is absolutely willing to accept him. Mainly, what Ma Xianhong did wasn't illegal, and logically, the company has no legitimate reason to arrest him, otherwise, they wouldn't have sent temporary workers to handle it. He would also gain a valuable friend within the company. He's already decided that now that he knows the truth, his next step is to cultivate diligently and climb the corporate ladder through his intelligence. If he's high enough and powerful enough, he can protect Feng Bao even if her secret of immortality is exposed. My first condition is that since Chen Duo has submitted to me, I will ensure her safety. I will explain what happened that day clearly. I don't blame her. I demand that you not harm her. My second condition is that the person who made me create the cultivation furnace is Chu Tong of the Yaoxing Society. She has considerable influence both openly and secretly and wants to overthrow the existing order. I need your help to rescue my family from her. Having been deceived by Chu Tong for so many years, he desperately wants to go back and settle accounts with her and find his family. But reason told him he was no match for Chu Tong. Even with the 12 superior roots, it would be futile, especially since he was already trapped in Nadu Tong's clutches. The only way to rescue his family was to use the company's power. Zhang Yulin turned to look at Wang Zhenqiu, who looked down at his phone. After a while, seeing Zhuang's reply, Wang Zhenqiu nodded to Zhang Yulin. Zhang Yulin smiled and replied to Ma Xianhong, "The company has agreed to your request. Tell me what happened. How did Chu Tong kidnap your parents?" Ma Xianhong didn't hide anything and revealed everything. After learning of Chu Tong's situation, Nadu Tong's board of directors immediately convened a meeting, gathering a large number of elite superhumans as quickly as possible to arrest Chu Tong at the Yaoxing Society building. Above the Yaoxing Society building, George teleported in and then slowly descended. The company has sent word that they've surrounded Xianhong's Biao village. Take your men there. If Xianhong is captured, kill all the escorts and bring him back to me. Chu Tong stood by the huge French windows, a glass of red wine in her hand, looking at the bustling city outside, and spoke coldly. Behind her, several extraordinary individuals of varying ages and clothing, but all with exceptionally strong internal energy, respectfully responded and were about to turn and leave the room. However, at that moment, Chu Tong suddenly exclaimed in surprise, because she saw a young man appear outside the glass window. In a flash, the man had entered the room through the window. "You are Jin Bao?" Chu Tong's expression instantly turned serious after recognizing George, and her subordinates quickly ran over to protect her behind her. "No need. You go and do the task I gave you. Mr. Jin wants to kill me, you can't stop him." She had connections in the company's upper echelons and naturally knew about Jin Bao, and how Jin Bao had fought back against the Wang family's experts. She knew that even she and all her subordinates combined weren't enough to kill Jin Bao with one hand. Seeing her men leave, Chu Tong tossed her hair and smiled, saying, "I wonder what brings Mr. Jin here so suddenly. I like straightforward people. I've come for only one purpose. I want your double-handed hand. Of course, not by force, but in a transaction. You can name your terms." George was very direct. Although Chu Tong had done something excessive to Ma Xianhong, and there might even be some bigger conspiracy later, she hadn't provoked him, so he wouldn't directly subdue him and search his soul. He still opted for a transaction as always. Hearing George's words, Chu Tong's expression changed. She then got up and took the most expensive bottle of red wine from the wine cabinet, personally pouring George a glass. "Mr. Jin, your strength and character are truly admirable. I'm also very willing to offer you the double-handed hand, but I haven't decided on the terms yet. Could you allow me some time to think it over and give you an answer in a few days?" With Jin Bao's strength, if this transaction was handled well, it would bring her enormous benefits. So she was definitely willing. But not now. Good steel should be used on the blade. She needed to think carefully about how to maximize Jin Bao's value. "Okay, take your time thinking, no rush." George sat down leisurely upon hearing this, waving his hand towards the red wine, which instantly turned into green tea. "I don't like red wine, I prefer tea." He was very clear about Chu Tong's little scheme, but he wasn't the kind of person to be easily manipulated. He agreed so readily and without any rush because he knew Chu Tong would soon use this bargaining condition, and it was the kind that would make things easiest for him. Seeing George slowly sit down and drink tea without leaving immediately, Chu Tong was secretly delighted. She began to subtly probe George, trying to find out his background. She didn't believe George's true identity as Jin Bao. She thought George was just using Jin Bao's skin. Otherwise, how could he have such great strength at such a young age? This was also the conclusion reached by the company after various research and investigations. She thought that if she could find out Jin Bao's true identity, she might be able to use her double-handed brainwashing skills to bring him to her side. With Jin Bao in charge, her plan's success rate would be greatly increased. However, after a short while, she hadn't received any useful information from George, and instead received a fatal phone call. Ma Xianhong has defected to the company, you've been exposed, and the company has dispatched a large number of superhumans to capture you. They've probably arrived already, you need to find a way to escape. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all, see you in the next video.